Right.
Yeah.
Well,
This is Vince Jimno, Executive Director. We're convening the subcommittee of the two-tier Master Esthetician Research Project. Those present are Jeanette Benaldi, Board Member, Alex Leader, Vice Chair of the Board, and David Austin, Board Member. There are no guests present, and the meeting started exactly at 9 o'clock. And we'll start with Mr. Leader leading off with the first part of the discussion.
great. Thanks, Ben. What I passed out to you are a couple of different things. The first thing is just a direction or a committee report for today's date, the August 17th, and just kind of branching off from a discussion from last time where where Jeanette, I guess, had actually brought up the question of how we should call a basic level or a skilled level and what we might consider for a second tier. So I just kind of threw something out there and put it on paper so it gives us a chance to scratch it off or start, at least having an area of focus. The second thing that I gave you was the role and the characteristics of the NCEA, which if you recall from the board packet that Vince prepared for us, when we looked at the District of the Columbia statutes, the 1/8/2010, and then we have a binder section on the NCEA with just a couple of different pages in it. You can go ahead and add this NCEA section to that section of your binder. And basically, in a nutshell, that tells you what an NCEA certified professional is. It also tells you the benefits and responsibilities of that professional. And then it tells you 5 reasons why you should become an NCEA certified professional. And if you recall, it was the District of Columbia that they quantify that second tier licensing by having membership in this particular organization. So that'll be helpful for you guys to review a little bit later. And then I do have the entire certified training manual. So if your curiosity is piqued a little bit and you do kind of want to get through this, it does give you one of the things that it does do, which I thought was really cool, and as I'm thumbing through it I can see it, is it not only does it tell you areas to study, but it will give you promotional advice on why you're studying it. Like it'll tell you what their positions are. If you recall from the review materials before, the NCEA has spent years developing the needs assessment for the second tier, which is kind of an interesting thing. So that's the reason why they feel that they're the only certified training company, is because they've gone through the assessment process of what is even required in terms of a specialized skill or education. And they've codified that in this training manual. So I can certainly make that available to all of you.
Mr. Leader, that's a good point. One of the issues is if we get into that, one of the dialogues we'll have is, do we want to go with someone else dictating the mandated requirements, or do we take their model and adjust it to what we want to do here in this state, and then develop our own similar kind of process? The issue is because of the need of their goal to meet their goals, they had to do an assessment of the industry's needs, where they're going, what's lacking, and so they're creating a direction. Whether the direction fits with us or not is one of the major discussions. In DC's process, they just adopted it in total without further discussion. I think we're in the process of actually really thinking it all through first. So that's an excellent point, Mr. Leader.
Well, I'm kind of fascinated with the way that the District of Columbia identified that one agency, because there's 5 different agencies in the United States that offer advanced aesthetics certified training. So it's kind of odd that the District of Columbia
why they adopted that one without
just
doing
the one, when there's 5 of them. I'm very surprised.
Maybe the latest presentation was.
Or lobbying efforts.
Lobbying efforts.
Yeah, lobbying efforts.
And we want to stay away from that because I think we're much healthier in a defensible position if whatever we do it because we've done it after researching everything.
David also provided the advanced aesthetics manual. So right now, the schools are using the Milady Standard Aesthetics. Generally speaking, there is another book out that, and then now David went to the conference, I think in Sacramento, and made this available to me, and I can certainly make it available to everybody, or we should maybe. Bring
we need
one
to buy
board.
a couple more copies. We can. It's not a problem.
And it'll probably be presented in Seattle, so perhaps there'll be a way that we can.
I'm more than happy to send you one. Trust me.
Yeah, Milady has been very good at giving everybody who attended the conference a copy of their newest book, and if you need more, they'll either send them to you or you can buy more. For outfits like us, they'll just give them to us.
Mm-hmm. I think it'd be a useful tool to have.
I have one, I believe.
Yeah,
we've got one.
I grabbed two.
By the way,
I really appreciate.
By the way, we keep a library at the office.
We might have that
of all the stuff that they give to us at the conference. If there are things like this, because we keep both Pivot Point and Milady, because those are benchmarks. Because we don't endorse either one, but we endorse them all if they're competent. And Milady's probably been one of the leaders.
The offices when you have one, I have one. Jeanette doesn't need one.
If you need to see one, Jeanette, we can ship one up to you. But I think we have the old stuff.
Ship it early.
But we will get, we will. If you want a copy for yourself, because of the research we're doing, it's not a big deal for us to get copies for everybody.
I would like one. In fact, I was like, and then I'm thinking, what are the four other companies? Do you know them offhand, or can I look them up?
Well, certainly International Dermal Institute and Sedesco.
Yeah, those are the two I know. That's all.
You know, there's this one that starts with an I, and then there's a what they call a paramedical aesthetics training out of Texas.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
And then there's even one more that markets itself as a cosmetic makeup, permanent makeup outfit, but then they offer the, I think it's out of the company's called PCA. Is that what it is? Is it PCA? Oh. And they offer, because they offer peel training. So they can certify you in TCA peels, which I find very unusual, and they can certify you on the beta hydroxy and alpha hydroxy peels.
Alex, are all of these companies well known and legitimate versus fly by night online?
I think the ones that just I kind of casually mentioned.
You think those are all the solid?
Those are the ones that we see a lot of in terms of they might provide authorship to an industry trade publication article. They might sponsor a conference where there's a little bit more resource taking place that to try to be more influential.
The reason I ask is, you remember we had the 911 mobile whatever thing. When we looked into their quote school that they went to, it was all fly by night. It was a couple of individuals who had posted a website and published a small booklet, and really weren't a school. They weren't sanctioned. They weren't a legitimate company that had reputation or had the proper staff trained for that kind of stuff. So these, like Milady, is very obvious.
Right.
They've been around a long time. Pivot Point's another one, and these other companies sound like they've been around for a while.
I think that I don't certainly never want to disparage anybody for, being in the marketplace, but I think when you start looking at private labeling companies like Preston Wynn, Douglas Preston has 3 or 4 different certifying companies where he certifies esthetician on painless extracting. So he's using a trademarked extracting tool, and I think it's called R-Extractor. So it has that prescriptive first name. Do you know what I'm saying? RX as prescription.
Sounds like
so. It's an R-Extractor. So it has that medical appearing
implication anyway.
Yeah.
They imply medical
it
connection.
implies prescriptive.
But is it?
Yeah. So I think, maybe, again, I don't want to disparage a company on record at all.
No,
I understand.
But
I'm just trying to say that if you're trying to have some comparisons, that's one comparison that I would make that may have a less...
Well, the reason I bring it up is we want to make sure we have bona fide companies or institutions that can easily be tracked and have a historical record of doing it the appropriate ways.
Yeah. And then you do also, one of the areas that you want to take a look at too is your errors and omissions liability companies are also going to produce publications. Like the ASCAP, ASCP is the acronym for the Associated Skincare Professionals, and they offer errors and omissions insurance, and their publication is called Skin Deep, I believe. And so they offer additional certifying online. And then estheticians can also take classes with the NCTB or something, where it's the National Massage Therapy and Body Works Professional Board, which is the qualifying board for the state of Nevada Massage Board therapists. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know much about them.
In order to get a massage therapy license in Nevada, you first need to test with that NCBTBM or whatever, the National Certifying Body Works and Massage Therapist Board. You first have to test with them and be it's the same kind of thing that this NCEA is. It's you test and you are a member, and then you test for the state licensing.
Yeah, some of the boards and commissions don't have, they don't authorize school curriculums and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so they use national test companies or institutions that provide training that have been adopted by enough states. In that case, when they started the Massage Therapy Board, they didn't have anything to utilize, so they had to pick a national company, and they said they blessed that one as the one that they were going to use. So that's how they got there. But that's a startup board. It's only been around since, 2005, 2006?
I was going to say 2001. I'm a member.
No, the national is older, but our state one was created in 2006 or 7.
I think since you came on board.
Yeah, just before that. And so they're basically looking for something to fill the gaps. Mm-hmm. So they picked on that one, which is legitimate, it's recognized nationally by a lot of states. So they didn't have any problem. In our case, when we get into these things, we need to be careful what we're talking about so we understand. Even NIC is a little thin as a national organization. It's really a testing company, nonprofit testing company. We could easily have done it with 2 or 3 other companies. Yeah, PSI, SMT actually has a test now. There's a couple of others. I forget the name of it. They call me once in a while, but it's something Review or View. Pearson View is another big company does it. And these companies don't necessarily do it in our profession. They do it in aeronautics, nursing. So they have long history, but not in our cosmetology. But they could easily do it. Their skills are very, very sound. So there's a number of companies. We had the perception, at least my observation of when I came, is NIC just happened to be the one that they are operating with now. We could easily change. It's a vendor from my perspective. And that's exactly what the Massage Therapy Board thing. It's a vendor of training.
Yeah.
And then they say these are the minimums you should learn to become a massage therapist. And if you pass the test, we can say that you've been trained properly. And that's what's going on with that.
And so I guess, again, to answer your question about which ones are legitimate and which ones aren't, I think you're just going to have to I think we just have to research that. There are going to be ones that stand out because they've been designated by an agency, a state agency, as being, the vendor to training testing or whatnot. But then there are going to be others, I think, that, and particularly in the private label section, where I think they're going to probably be a little more fly-by-night, not so much long-standing companies. I did want to maybe also just point out to you, too, that I added more terminology. So in our last meeting, I gave you a page that had terminology, and then I've taken the suggestions from our last meeting, where particularly Jeanette talked about these additional words, and I just to kind of keep adding to our dictionary of terminology. And the one that really sticks out in my head the most is paramedical. I don't know why that bugs me a little bit. But I remember in regulatory review, we were trying to get advanced medical and paramedical as the words that were restrictive use. And I noticed that paramedical was excluded for one reason or another. I have no idea why, but it's just an interesting thing that I do see it come up. Like I was just reading American Spa, and it comes up in American Spa. It's not the August issue, but it comes up in one of their other issues. And so again, you get these throwaway journals where it's starting to introduce these concepts, these alternative kind of holistic or
almost every website
Yeah.
that has medical esthetician.
They're trying to move it to the medical side.
Yeah.
And also, but the doctors are a lot to blame for this.
Yeah, I think
A
so
lot,
too.
greatly to blame. And I went to another website. I was given a specific one last night in town here. It's actually a doctor's office. And when you look under their aesthetic services, they've got waxing, makeup, microdermaplaning. They have medical stuff listed under
Yeah.
aesthetic services. Those are not aesthetic services. I had a real problem with that. So what happens when the public sees this?
That's what, yeah.
And I know a couple of people who, my friend Chris specifically, goes in. He had no idea there was no such thing that we didn't offer a medical esthetician's license. He thought we thought that was a category of the
Yeah,
license.
it's been invented.
Because all the time he thought that was another category that we license. Cosmetology, hair, nails, aesthetics, and medical estheticians.
So before I maybe turn it over to you to tell us maybe
What
what
this
you
stuff
provided.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to just touch base on what I've written up as is Nevada ready for clinical cosmetology, and the reason why I wrote it up that way is because I honestly feel that there's a clear distinction between skilled entry-level competency and avoiding medical, because when the interpretation of medical implies the ability to diagnose, and I think that is the area that we were sincerely always going to be undertrained. I mean, we simply, our profession is focused on, and it's according to our state law, our profession is focused on beautifying, massaging, cleaning, and stimulating. So it's not, there's no indicator of diagnosing. And so...
And to add to that, I'm sorry, but
No.
while you're talking about it, the nursing board, nurses are not allowed to diagnose either.
No, I know.
So
they're even more, they can't even diagnose, and RN can't even.
well,
so.
I'm just saying that when it comes to medical, that is actually one of the key points to being medical, is that there's an ability to be able to diagnose it. It's not the ability to treat. It's not the ability to refer. It's not the ability to have a subordinate. It's the ability to be able to ascertain and the treatment protocol, or what the problem is, and quantify it with a treatment protocol.
Some of the confusion comes in, at least for me, as from an outside point of view, not being into the field itself in detail, is the difference between what the nurses can do and a physician's assistant can do, and the difference in the training and the fact
Great
that
difference.
physician's assistants can actually diagnose. My understanding, the ones at the hospitals that are dealt with on the hotlines,
Any PA,
They're
physician's assistant,
supposed to be trained.
they can do almost everything but surgery.
they're
almost.
close to a doctor. They're almost a
They're-
doctor.
They carry a 2-year degree. I mean, they carry a bachelor's. It's a mandatory to have a bachelor's, and then it's a 2-year
Two-year training.
In addition, so it's sort of
So,
And
but they,
there's an intern.
That's what I'm saying, is that they have a specific niche in it.
now typically RNs can't write prescriptions, but you've got nurse practitioners who I'm not quite sure what they can do something in between. They can
Yeah.
actually, and I believe they can diagnose. I'm not 100% sure. I know
Minimally.
some, huh?
They can diagnose minimally.
Minimally.
Yeah, it depends
There's certain things they can't. Like they're limited on their scripts.
Yes, I know they can't write certain scripts.
Hardcore drugs,
Right, correct.
yeah.
But they can write antibiotics.
And that's where we get into the confusion about estheticians who, the doctors are using them as lesser costly employees. And they say, well, if I train them, at least they know what they're doing. And I started paying attention when I go to the doctor's office now. I've been going to the eye doctor. I've had a problem with one eye for many, many years, and we're protecting the other eye very closely. And so I started asking all these questions when I'm in there. What are you, an MA or a PA? Oh, I'm an MA. And what kind of training do you have? And they, of course, they spill their guts.
Well, the PA is not going to come in and show, but the RN, you're never going to see the PA unless it's in place of the doctor. If the PA is going to see the PA, you're not going to see the doctor.
But the MAs vastly vary about how much training. Some are the doctor trained me, and I said, well, how long did they do that? Well, in the ophthalmologist, to run the little machines, it's 2 hours every day for 6 weeks, every day that they work. They have to stay after, and the doctor goes through all the training for that. So they're getting maybe, 6 times 60 hours, 80 hours of
Board of
training.
Medical Examiners' fault because they have no guidelines.
Yeah, but that's because the doctor there thinks that they have to have at least that to be safe. And they don't even intrude on anybody. They're just showing you looking through the mirrors and stuff. But it's real interesting to watch the variance because some of them are 2 hours, 5 hours, and they're injecting. It all depends on the doctor. And not to say doctors used to have a very high reputation. In Nevada, I think it's getting less and less, especially since the endoscopy.
Ethically or professionally?
Just the general perception of the
I
outside.
think both.
Unfortunately.
Because of the scandals and stuff, and people are beginning to realize that I thought they were trained and highly regulated, and they're not. It's like podiatry. When I chatted with him, they didn't even know that they couldn't have a what do you call it, a pedicure operation unless it's under their supervision. He said, no, we thought we could just have it next door, and it's okay. I said, we got to license it. Oh, we didn't know that. Now that's another board. They were very receptive to all the ideas. But that's what I think Nevada lacks, is that dialogue. And I'm not sure how far we want to get into the medical stuff. You guys have to call that.
Well, actually, I think that there's a very clear distinction. I think even in my paragraph, I've identified that really one of the key components that is missing is we are not trying to recapture those folks that want to call themselves estheticians that go to work in a medical spa without renewing their license. When you start boiling down everything that we're even here for, really what we're here for is because there's a certain segment of our licensees that are choosing to have the title and the expertise associated with being an esthetician, but without having to have the regulatory compliance and the license with which to do what they want to do. They want to enjoy the benefits of it, they just don't want to have the regulatory compliance of it. And so that's kind of the loophole. So for me, what I kind of see in terms of, and the reason why I called it clinical cosmetology is because it does exactly that. It helps to act as a bridge. It helps to say that you've got this focus of cosmetology, which is still beautifying and, all of your main components of the laws, and basically those are coming from your 644. Here, I've written it down on one of my sheets of paper here, but it's coming from 644.0205 and 644.023. Those are the two main NRSs that pertain to why we even have cosmetology in the first place. And so once you satisfy that requirement, and then once you see what your medical needs are, that's the niche that I feel we're supposed to be filling in. We're supposed to be filling in this niche. It's like you've basically got Mexico and the United States, and you need to figure out how that little border division, how wide and scope of practice that border's going to be. Now, I'm using a nationality. I don't mean to do that. I just mean to say that you have one characteristic of a group of folks, and you have another characteristic of a group of folks. And between the two is the chasm. And right now, I kind of see that chasm as getting broader. So it kind of started out as narrow, where it was just like, for me personally, 14 years ago when I went to work for a dermatologist, I was one of the few estheticians that worked for a dermatologist. So my scope of responsibility was kind of small. I offered medical grade chemical peels. That was initially what I was hired to do. Well, as the revenue stream increased in that avenue, they took me to dermatopathology management. I did skin cancer injection sites to numb the skin for excisions. I did intramuscular injections. So again, that chasm started out kind of small, but as that practice saw the revenue stream that could come from a licensed professional, that chasm grew wider and wider. And it was kind of up to me to say, well, could we kind of scale in some of those responsibilities?
And I think that's the biggest issue, is it's expanding and there's no regulation, no clear definitions.
Right.
I don't see a problem from just listening to the dialogue and starting to look at it, that if we wanted to expand into a second tier, that at least we would be able to help define the minimum amounts of education and the kinds of things and tools that they would be allowed to do. And the hope is we'd get as close to the medical as possible, leave no gap.
Right.
I'm seeing a very interesting comparison because the nursing board has been fighting with the doctor, the board of medical examiners, because they are trying to get nurses to do things that the nursing board does not allow the licensees to do. So the doctor is stating, in our office, under our license, we have control over what your licensees do. We're having the same thing happening here.
It's exactly the same thing, yeah.
Well, the problem is, there's a little bit of a distinction with the problem, is that our licensees choose not to renew because they're not in cosmetological
They can't call
establishments.
themselves estheticians.
Well, you say that, but I get my entree into that
Because
medical environment by using my existing license,
one-
whether or not I renew or whether I'm operating in a licensed cosmetological establishment.
Can I pull up my laptop? Bring
Yeah.
up the websites, a couple of them, where
Yeah.
one of them says, I think it would be a good idea, we could look at a couple of them,
Yeah.
where one of them even specifically says, must be certified in this.
You have to tie into
I've got a...
So then the
Card,
distinction there, David, becomes in the RN industry, you're not going to be working somewhere without that active
Well,
RN license.
the real
We're also
problem.
using MAs to avoid...
Yeah, the real problem is the nurses feel that they have the right and the training, etc., to do those functions. The doctors are choosing not to use a nurse, which may be $50 an hour or whatever they
Right.
are nowadays, to use an MA that's being paid $21 an hour or whatever that is.
Right.
And it's an economic issue. It is not a medical issue. The trouble the nurses are upset is we take all this training to do it, and these other folks get 6 hours or 10 hours training from the doctor, and now they're doing the jobs that we spent a long time. That's their argument, the philosophical positioning, and economic. We're starting to see that in our estheticians, which are being dragged. They're partially trained, they're knowledgeable, reasonably knowledgeable, and they want them to be able to do all these other things. In Utah, they actually set a second tier. They've got a curriculum, and you have to go to school so many more hours.
Right.
And my sense is that we're in the early stages of that dialogue, and we can either ignore it or we can deal with it. And the dealing with it may be we have to set some parameters, what we think are the limits for estheticians, and what it would be the kind of training that would be qualifying them to do this next level. And we have to negotiate that line with the Board of Medical Examiners, because they're going to continue to violate it without an agreement, some kind of emotional agreement or a written agreement.
Okay, so I just have a couple things, and one is, firstly, I think the estheticians that are in the medical practice now don't realize, maybe some do, but as we stated before, they're minimally required. It's a minimally expected curriculum that we have for aesthetics currently. So when they get into the medical field, yeah, they're all pumped up and they're really excited about it, and they realize the doctor's got coverage over them or whatever, and they just feel like it's advanced training. Now that would be for me and all the other people that I worked with, going to all the plastic surgery conventions, learning about all the different techniques you could use and that were approved by the doctors, and then integrating them into your situation. So I agree that they can't go back into the salons and use them because they're not really by law. But I don't think they realize that, and maybe it's because they've got pumped up. They feel like they've had advanced training. They're going in under whatever guise we used to call medical estheticians, and now they go back into the salons. And that's one of the challenges I do have because the public's not being protected. So,
well, that's an ethical standard, for
right,
sure.
Right. So I think that's a lack of education, or maybe a lack of awareness, even.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I talked to Lou at great length, I don't think he even uses MAs. He might use a PA. He uses mostly estheticians.
Right.
And then nurses. That's what he uses now. He really likes the idea of a tiered aesthetics program. He really likes the idea of doing a clinical with an internship. He thinks that's a fabulous idea because not only do you have what we require, but then we're integrating it into his practice or a practice for docs with advanced training.
Because he can get a better qualified candidate.
Yeah.
If we're helping to step up our entry-level competency, we can still step it up in that second tier. That second tier can still be entry-level competency. I mean, that's the curious thing about it, to be quite frank with you. The entry-level competency the second tier doesn't need to be more advanced. It just needs to have a whole different set of academic aesthetic standards associated to it. And I addressed that in my my little...
This is the one I forwarded to you. This is Renew.
Oh, yeah, this is...
Okay, very good. Careers.
Can you see this?
No, I've seen it before.
You've seen it before. Here's careers.
David showed it to me the other day.
Okay, medical spa esthetician, spa massage therapist. Now, successful candidates must have minimum under medical spa certification in the state of Nevada, 2 years aesthetics experience. Now, if you go down to the salon technician, current license for the state of Nevada. No, do they not realize that estheticians are licensees?
Well, the interesting thing is by calling it a medical esthetician, where is their CPR training, number one? And where is that little...
Where is it? How can there is no certification in the state of Nevada?
Wait, because when I was working in that field, there was a certification put out by some private vendors.
It's not the state of Nevada.
They're not legal.
They're not legal. They're vendors.
They're just vendor...
but
I like vendor training.
You don't really...
Client does this very...
You don't have that awareness that there is a difference. Because you understand, you have a license, now you're all with these...
Doesn't this border fraud?
You're with these docs.
We may want to look at that later. But that same way with when you go to a show and you buy a piece of equipment, it's certified, right? What does it mean? It's certified by the underwriters of says won't kill you. But that's one issue. But they're not certified by the state. And in our law, it says that all our equipment used in the profession are under our license has to be approved by the board prior to using it. Period. And they don't come before us. None of them. Other than the stuff that's been around 20 years, we haven't seen a new product ever brought to my office and said, we'd like to get this certified. How do we do that?
Staff.
And we do it. We'd have the technical staff. We'd have the board.
Yeah.
Here's one else I wanted to show you.
And see, that's the problem.
Understaff.
Vendor certified.
Understaff. Medical spa staff. They have the RN, the MSN.
Oh, now they're bypassing it.
Medical consultant and esthetician.
Yeah, that's a bypass right there.
Medical consultant and esthetician.
Right, that's how they're bypassing.
Now here under salon and spa services are the stylists and massage therapists.
Right.
But the
medical spa staff.
But the medical staff lists the esthetician.
It might be the way that their shop is configured. And
Well, that's what I told David.
Yeah,
But this isn't
salon
leading-
and spa is licensed by our agency.
But this if you're the public, this tells you estheticians are medical personnel.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what that tells me is that it's a medical consultant. They're going to tell me that my ryotides can be fixed by the doctor.
Yes, and that's implied. It doesn't have to be directly said. Implied is a legal standpoint.
So one of the problems that
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
we have is that do they license and then maintain the license footprint of the part that where the esthetician's legally able to work under their license, and is that where their license is posted? What David is seeing, or at least he's telling me that he's been in a number of them, is their licenses wherever they're doing the medical stuff too.
Right.
And so there's an implication that these are estheticians that are working under their license and scope of practice under our regulations, and they're not. So that's a real problem for us, because it may be the configuration of the building and how they license these 3 rooms versus those 3 rooms.
And that's actually my biggest concern. When you look at my clinical cosmetology paper, I think one of the things that you're going to come away from it is trying to fix that gap. There's that sincere gap of, we don't even have the authority, it doesn't seem to me, that you could go into this medical spa and say, hey, if you're going to call yourself a 644-0205 esthetician,
We didn't have the right.
you are supposed to be in an establishment.
And you're not.
And then you shouldn't be marketing yourself as such. Now, I understand that you hold that license, but the contingency of that license is operating in another
within
license.
establishment.
And so there is this ever-widening gap. And the thing that sticks in my mind the most is, I remember when we were talking about peels yesterday with the salicylic. Well, the doctor that I had worked for, the practice that I had worked for, we talked about that. And I was one that said, hey, listen, peel is a peel. The actual peeling of the skin on chem exfoliation is a side effect. It's not the goal of chem exfoliation. And this is something that actually should have been talked about in the board meeting yesterday, because there's a misconception that when you have a peel, that somehow the shedding of the epidermis, the hyperkeratinized skin, is somehow the objective. But actually that's not. That's a side effect. It's an actually unfortunate and undesirable side effect. Most people don't want that.
It sort of bothers them.
The actual goal of chem exfoliation is to moisturize the skin. You have ambient moisture attraction that's clinically proven, 8 to 22% if you want to know characteristics, but that's the goal, moisturization. So when we were talking with Sarah yesterday about maintaining this kind of idea of the peel, well, realistically, there's more to it than that. The peel is, and I'm worried now that just that little gap, when it comes to talking about chem exfoliation, because that's what you're talking about, chemical exfoliation. Chemical exfoliation is a wide range of acids. It's a wide range.
Yeah.
I mean, your retinols, your malics, your lactics.
Alex, I think that one of the things I see in the construction of the chapter in general is there's not been enough detailed research. It's just been reactions to certain conditions, and so they establish a law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what we're doing now is just the opposite. We're saying we need to really define things, understand the science behind it, understand what the downsides are, the upsides, and then make a recommendation. Because otherwise you're going to get these kind of dialogues where, what does the law really mean, and is it defined enough to make sense, that kind of stuff. I'm real proud of this effort that you guys are undertaking. It's going to be a lot harder than you might have originally thought. But we're curing a couple things. The medical profession does not want to force the doctors to use estheticians other than the way they have been.
Right.
But we don't allow them to be that, so they take their license away and then they function under the doctor. And they're only really capturing the understanding and training of the skin education, is my understanding, what I get. So they are somewhat ready to go to train. My concept is that what I'm hearing a lot in the dialogue is we need to really say we're willing to allow that to happen, but this is the education base that has to be there.
Right.
And we can't just let any esthetician with a basic education do things that really need a significant amount more of additional education so they would understand the damage or accidents that could occur from using those procedures, and that they have to be more trained than a common, and I don't mean the word in a negative way, but the regular practitioner. And that's the part that I see this effort really addressing. Do we want to do that first? And if we do, how much do we want to go? And who do we got to negotiate to be sure that we're going to get consensus from the other boards that allow us to do that effectively?
And I think there's even a couple other components that you can segue right into that, which is not crippling the schools by arbitrarily increasing the skill sets of instructors. You can't, just because you have a second tier available in a licensing area doesn't mean that the instructor has to meet or exceed that expectation. Remember, this instructor has the ability to teach, not the skill sets that help to certify that second tier.
Well, that's where I think what DC was dealing with is we don't have a school to do that.
Right.
So who do we look to provide that provides it, that we can authorize as the official education? An example, in the United States, every state has universities that can teach engineering. That's not a problem. But if we only had one agency that taught advanced engineering, then they would have to adopt that. Now, NCEA tried to capitalize on that. The issue is there may be more than one. Our job is to decide, do we want to go that route like DC did, if we do something like that, or do we slowly, methodically build in our own capacity within our own schools, which means that takes several years to develop. Curriculum,
Right.
types of people who would teach the curriculum. What's been the downside of this whole issue has been its manufacturing product is driving these new requirements.
And I think it's textbook companies.
Yeah, well,
Well, it's jumping on the
creates
bandwagon.
business for them.
Well, it's going, so
It
if
is
I was a
going.
textbook company, I'd be putting them out all day long.
Here's the other one that I looked at yesterday. Actually, it's doctors' offices, and
I'll come sit over there.
I like the Holland Rise because it's the
trying not to
it's
say the
the
name,
art one.
but I guess we're okay. It's then the Medi Spa. When I looked at their aesthetic services, esthetician services. This is what estheticians, I would assume, could do.
Now, do you know if this is a licensed cosmetological establishment?
No, I don't. See, we have the numbers. I check on them, but I
Okay.
don't know what I'm looking for.
Whatever
Most of them are
NV
probably-
off machine, okay, and then DF machine. The Lonazine DF machine uses intensified. I can actually give you the link.
It's like a pulse light.
Now, esthetician services. Let's see, there's more. Let's see, where's
Kind of not a user-friendly website.
medical spa treatments? Let's look at the next one. Facials and peels.
Yeah, so deep epidermis
Well,
peels.
the doctor's around, but however, it says esthetician services,
Right.
assuming estheticians could do
They
this.
use it
Dermal,
freely.
epidermal.
They use the terms freely.
Yeah, waxing, which is a service. Permanent makeup, which is not an esthetician service.
So they're just kind of mixing it up a little bit.
Now, where's the other one that I saw?
So you remember how that they didn't want us to be called medical a
oh,
while
oh.
ago because that would be stepping in and infringing their rights? Don't you think they're infringing on our rights by taking away the terms of aesthetics and using aesthetics?
Here's the other one I
That's not
found.
really fair.
I find
Well, I think what it is though is that there's just the stretching of the boundaries is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like they know that Vince lacks the authority to be able to figure out how to recapture lost cosmetological
now
establishments.
microdermabrasion we can do. Micro peel, chemical exfoliation using glycolic acid to soften, smooth, and even the texture of the skin.
Well, it looks like all those ones on the side are all the choices.
But if this is under a medical spa, they can do all
Yeah,
this because
but
they're
there's-
covered.
But what I'm saying is, they're saying they're
Yeah, but
esthetician
doctors
services.
take
So this,
it's like
It
I
falls
can
out.
schedule.
Dermaplane.
I can schedule
Yes,
my.
I used to do dermaplane.
I can
Dermaplane.
schedule
Fabulous.
my trichloric acid peel.
but what I'm saying is basically anybody's assuming that this is what an esthetician does.
Well, that's David's position.
And I think-
is,
yeah.
well, he's saying the public image of what's going on is what he sees, the people believing, which in fact is not true.
Well, perception is reality.
Yeah. The second part is,
Implied reality.
what I don't have a problem with the estheticians wanting to make more money, period. And getting in, if they want to take the training and get under a doctor's train and have a sophisticated training program so
Right.
it's safe.
Perfect.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, great.
And I also see the negative where these estheticians are dropping their license, not renewing, and then 5 or 6 years from now, something else goes on, a new development. They can't return without major problems. And so
Well, they
there's a
think
lot
they
of...
can do these things in the salon, and the clients think it's
Yeah.
okay too. They don't
Well, there may
realize.
be the board of medical examiners may pass an ordinance or a regulation that says you can't do that without 500 hours more training, and that's sort of what they're playing with now, getting forced to go that way in the new regulation review that they're fooling around with, talking about what's the minimum standard of training. If that occurs, these people in the limbo land here that are doing it may be left out in the cold.
Yeah, and my one friend, where he goes and gets facials, that same girl operates the lasers.
Well-
Not in the same room, but she's and
Go somewhere else in the
In a-
building to do that.
Is there any laser we can use now
No.
at all?
he didn't
That's
realize he
been
couldn't
approved.
operate lasers.
Is it possible to bring lasers before the board?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, get him approved, absolutely.
I think what you have to demonstrate, though, is that your vision safety. You know, that's really where because even under your door, that residual ambient laser light from underneath any
Bouncing
crease
off
in the
reflect.
door, any seaming that light extends has the potential for retinal damage.
Chase said he will attend the next meeting. He works for Cosmetology on this.
It sounds easy, Jeanette, to say, can't we just approve it? And then the trouble is, an example, we had the same problem with lasers in law enforcement with using lasers in the helicopters, that people were shooting a laser innocently, just screwing around with the pilots, and it's possibility of blinding the pilots by accident while he's flying.
Yeah, with ambient light. Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that people don't think about when they do it.
The other thing too is like with the lamp probe that he brought up the other day.
What is it?
Remember we do that according to NRS 644.095. That's a really good one for you to recall because that is that's the device approving.
Yeah, they bring it before,
law.
they talk about the
So-
manufacturing.
I'm going to go buy one and
product.
bring it in. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, actually, you don't need to buy one. Go to Judy Desipre. She owns one, and she advertises it and markets it. It's on her menu. She actually says that she'll do skin tag removal
What is
on
a
her
lamp
menu.
probe? What is it?
A lamp probe it's a cauterizing agent. So
Oh,
it
that's
just,
the one where take the
Yeah.
skin tag
That's
off.
when I said they did it right by my eye. But however, I got to tell you what happened. What's her licensing? Judy's.
Judy's. She's a esthetician.
And if she got in my eye, her insurance wouldn't cover her because
But
she's
if-
not approved.
But the
use.
liability issues are going to always be separate because everybody's going to carry a different errors and
Right.
omissions
And we
policy.
have to take a look at everybody's policy.
he's taking is-
But I've talked to an attorney who works for the insurance, and most of them are going to put riders on there in
Yeah.
the scope of practice.
Believe it or not, reflexology is omitted from my rider.
Really?
My E&O policy doesn't permit reflexology.
You can do serious damage with reflexology.
Well, I think what it
Check
is
your
is
policy for fine print about anything that's not within your scope of practice.
Well, I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm letting you know that's not within the scope of my
She
practice.
sells them, lamp probes.
Reflexology.
I've been sued.
She doesn't sell, she uses.
I've been sued for millions of dollars and officers have been, because the claim is they were outside of their scope of practice,
Yeah.
their authority, and if they find that, the city gets dumped out of the suit. Insurance, the big cap insurance policy we carry gets dumped out of the suit. You stand alone.
More
It's a
importantly,
really
though,
serious
is
thing.
with a skin tag removal, you've got a couple of different things going on. You have vascular; it's a vascular tissue,
Yeah.
skin tag, and then secondly, you don't have any. I'm losing the word. Where you send it out for pathology. There's no pathology reporting of the lesion that you removed. So I mean, realistically,
Is it
and
cancerous or
there
not?
is actually a case in Reno right now where, and I'm sure it's been in the paper, and maybe you guys have seen it down there, but there's like a 28-year-old girl who has melanoma, stage 4 melanoma, so skin, but they can't find the point of origin, and they think that the point of origin came from when she had something removed. From like when she was like a 14-year-old girl. It was in the paper. Didn't you see it in the paper? We could Google it online. But So all of a sudden now you've got a situation in the paper where 14 years ago this gal had something removed without having pathology done on it, and now 28 years later it's manifested itself as a great stage.
Was that a
4.
requirement by DocsBack in 14 years ago to always?
Anytime something's removed, you run pathology.
It's always been?
It has to be.
In
How do you
medical.
know what you removed?
In
And
medical
then,
procedures.
and then finally, the third thing that can come from skin tag removal is keloidal scarring, which we know is not the epidermis. So keloidal scarring is happening in your subcutaneous tissue. It's manifesting in that dermal layer of skin. So realistically, 3 things can go wrong with a lamp probe.
Wait.
It is a medical device, whether you want to say that it's beauty or not.
Yeah.
The manufacturers sell them at the aesthetic shows.
I'm a victim of X-ray problems when they started with X-rays many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We had, every orthodontist was using full head X-rays constantly. No one ever checked with your previous history to find out if you had it, too many of them and that sort of thing. Then remember the feet, the shoe places had X-rays for the feet. You stuck your feet in the machine and it would X-ray to see how your foot fitted in the shoe.
Really?
Yeah, that was all big time.
We were using
Brand new technology,
X-ray
all coming out.
cosmetology.
However, I ended up with cancer of the throat because I was an orthodontic patient. From 10 years old on, we went to a dozen orthodontists. Each took their own set of full head X-rays. They didn't ask us, do you have X-rays from the previous doctor? Can you bring them to us? We could have done that. Anyway, I ended up with thyroid cancer, all in the lymph glands in my throat, all from the products coming out that shouldn't be able to hurt you. It was wonderful. Everybody, 10 years later, they started prohibiting them use. Now when you go to get a teeth X-ray, what do? They put lead things everywhere, and the nurses, the attendants go outside the room because they found out it was a hell of a lot more dangerous than they thought. Same kind of thing with these kind of products. We don't know. And the manufacturers are pushing because they can make millions and millions and millions of dollars on it. So we want to be very careful as a regulatory agency. We don't set the stage for problems later. I don't have any problem with bringing forward manufacturing requests for approval of a machine. They don't do it. They certify it themselves, self-serving as hell, and then say it's certified. And as long as you do comply with our manufacturers, our insurance company will cover you.
What you know what a lot of manufacturers say is, this is what was said to me. Of course it's legal. It's an FDA Class 1 machine. Anybody could use it. Really? I said, we're in the state of Nevada.
And we don't
Have you seen our
accept a
statutes?
Class 1 status as an automatic qualifier.
But that's what they're telling people they're selling.
They're telling their
machine to.
customers to.
Yeah, it's Class
And the
machines.
problem is the manufacturing people are driving that, and the regulatory agencies are not dealing with it. So this effort, believe it or not, is going to help deal with all of that kind of stuff. That's my. Are you guys ready for a break, or?
I'd like a little more coffee.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes and get a restroom break and a coffee and whatever. And David, do you have any more things for the next session?
No, but I wanted to kind of go over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gotta
maybe
sit back
open.
Yeah, I want to go over where I'm kind of headed with that.
I'm going to declare a short 5 to 10 minute break, and we'll start the next session in about 10 minutes. We're reconvening the meeting. It's now 10 o'clock. David, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, I was leaving off. We were talking about X-ray, and there are certain hair removals, and there's ablative and non-ablative. And at the next meeting, Chase, who operates laser, who was an X-ray technician in the hospital, said that certain guidelines and certain lasers that are safe enough.
Now, is he going to come next meeting?
You told me he would be there. Yes.
And that's in Vegas?
Yes.
What's his name again?
Chase, I just forget his last name. I'll call you with it
Okay.
on that.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause he groaned because he's not a morning person, but.
Well, our meeting's down there. We can start at 9 o'clock. Is that late enough?
He groaned when I said
10.
that, but he will be. I will make sure he's there.
All right.
I will make sure Chase is there. And he brought up that there's also a possibility, if we do open this up, that, because he said, can I turn this hair removal way up and burn somebody? Yes. Can I, if I don't, but then again, I have access to 180 volume developer, and I can mix with bleach, and I can burn even worse than the laser can.
Right.
So there's a misuse. This other option is that the manufacturers we know would be more than thrilled if they can get their product out there to make, like, hair removal laser does not go that high. That can be turned up that high. There are lots of options. They'd work with us if they wanted.
David, I can see it if we say we approve a machine, but it shall not be operated at a level, and we stipulate the level that anything above that is considered a violation of the code. That kind of thing.
Yeah, so we find out what's safe and what's not. Okay, let me introduce this information, this stuff.
And then maybe just quickly, before you introduce the paperwork that you've brought, there will always be contraindications
Absolutely.
to any treatment protocol. So, it's...
People are going to find ways to misuse product. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that's what you kind of was by pointing out. Because typically we don't use 180 food grade. But years ago in the salons, they used to get it in watered down distilled water. But then again, it's not stable.
Well, it used to be that only professionals could use those little galvanic machines, and now they're sold on QVC.
Yeah,
New Skin.
I have one.
And it's interesting how now just on
those
QVC,
little galvanics are not as strong as the.
No, but I mean, if you're prone to epilepsy and you
that's
shove one
good.
of those galvanics on you, pretty much anticipate a response. So it's interesting how...
It didn't cross my mind, but that's absolutely right, yes.
For sure.
Could trigger an epileptic
For sure it could. And, it's not even that you would have to be using it, but like if you were just at the kitchen sink or in your dorm room sink and you were leaning over brushing your teeth with a little bit of water contact and the person next to you was using their little New Skin galvanic, you could actually have a response depending on your proximity. I think there's a 24-inch proximity. When I had galvanic, I could feel it in my whole body. Like I actually felt kind of nauseous.
This one is so minor because I use it, and I remember the galvanic in school. Sometimes I can taste the metal in my mouth.
The metal,
but that's about it. I don't feel it anywhere else.
But even with high frequency, the high frequency machine, that can throw epilepsy. You can engage in epileptic.
That's your fillings reacting.
Yeah, I know that.
So again, there will always be contraindications, and people will find ways to misuse equipment. And I think that's going to be part of.
We don't want to. Over.
David, before you start, did you say that Lewis is interested in helping give us information that might be helpful to us? Mm-hmm. Good. I just wanted to make sure.
And Lisa, who used to be Mueller, I can never remember her new last name. She's the head of his Skin Pros.
Can you see if they're willing the next time we have a meeting up here?
One
or more of them to.
That's what I was looking at. We have December 13th is we're not doing one on the 14th. But do you guys want to just stay late on the 13th and have him come in, or do you want me to see if he can come in on? That's a board meeting. The 13th
what I'll do is I'll tell you what the board meeting. Rather than the board meeting, I mean for the subcommittee discussions. That's where the critical is. We were able to ask questions that you can't do in a board meeting easily and stuff. We can either have a special meeting of this committee to take testimony or discussion with him and her, or we can have it, like we're doing today, with a meeting and see if his schedule allows that kind of thing. We don't want to impose negative on his business, obviously, but these folks are donating their time to help us.
And originally, December is just a bad time for me.
Yeah, it was just too many things.
What was I saying? Can we do it after as a separate?
Yeah,
as a separate meeting.
You're talking about the same day.
Same day.
But we don't have that.
No, we might do it in January because what he's saying is the time of the year is when they just about fill up every appointment possible.
Yeah,
and so I don't want to do that.
I'd
rather take our time
to have a committee meeting in December.
I know for the next day, right? Because I know.
Yeah, we passed on that.
But what if the afternoon runs late? We don't know. You just never know.
We can't time him on a board meeting. That's the biggest problem with board meetings.
How often do we have to come back after lunch? We did this last one.
And then the snow. There's that snow contingency for that time of year. Yeah. There's just a lot of.
All right, so January.
Maybe
January. January's in Vegas, probably.
Well, we don't want to have him come long distance. So So we don't mind scheduling. Whenever we do is have them come here. We August, September, October we have a meeting here. No, we have in Vegas. So the next meeting would be January or February 1st, first week of February.
January is.
I don't know what the date is, but
Vegas.
You and I will talk about it and try to pin down a date when it's available. Okay. David's got some.
That's a long time away, though.
Well, here's another option.
Don't be in such a rush.
Yeah, it's nothing's going to happen. We have to wait for the legislative process anyway.
You're going to do tremendous change to the system, and it takes time to do it right, and there's got to be laws passed to make it happen. So be patient.
I need a target.
The other thing that we could do is if when Vince comes up for a regular meeting, if David's amenable to it, then maybe the three of us can meet with him and kind of fill in.
I come up. We can schedule other meetings other than the meetings we've had. We could have a special meeting. Just have to post it. I can make arrangements for David to come up, and the four of us can meet a day completely different, consistent with your schedules when you can do it. That's outside of the schedule we've already got.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
So,
if you give David enough notice, he can rearrange his schedule.
Next week is good for you?
It's not for me.
No, it's right before we leave for.
It takes me 2 weeks to recover from the board meeting.
I think you just need posting requirements.
Yeah,
so
there's-
generally speaking, you'd want to give Vince 30 days notice. I guess.
Not even that. 2 weeks is more than enough that I can post it properly and get it advertised in the proper places, so we don't get accused of having a meeting without posting it.
Right. As we know,
Open meeting
that
law compliance stuff.
doesn't work. All right. Well, that helps me because I really.
I'll
would
talk
go
to you more about it.
So, David, what did you bring for us today in your collection? of
What
paperwork?
this is when I got your material regarding the salicylic acid.
Yeah.
And I saw it was done in 1987. My first reaction was, why did they remove it? Because we want to ask them to put it back. We didn't argue. We didn't know why they removed it, so we don't want to be blindsided, obviously, with, well, this, and this, and this. So I contacted the LCB Research Library, and she sent me any information regarding the changes made.
And then speaking of that, is anytime we have a question, I use a routine very frequently when we have a law that I don't understand how we got there, what was the rationale behind it. You go to the LCB and they're able to pull up all the documents about what was discussed at the legislature. And so you guys are welcome to do that anytime. You just call them and tell them who you are, and then you're looking to how to figure out the history of a particular law. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Okay. So this, we did a Committee of Commerce and Labor report from May 8th, 1987.
David, the way they're
minutes.
stacked is the earliest item is on the bottom, and it works its way to the top. So
I thought it was 1986 originally.
the bottom piece that you should find is a single page. It looks like this. It says special board meeting, June 1st, Las Vegas, Nevada, of the State Board of Cosmetology. There you go. That's what started it. They had a special meeting that they approved going to the legislature to make a change. That's what that deals with.
So then we'll just review all of these and
Material.
that'll give
Now
us
this doesn't give the whole answer, but
it gives us.
I saw some of the names involved, and one of them I want to mention because they will get very upset if they mentioned on a former director who Kathy called, and so she's trying to meet with her or myself to get a little more information because, you know, my experience after this in around 2000, and actually their discussions about microdermabrasion machines, they regret ever having approved them because the board early on tended not to want to really deal with anything. I feel that. Would you, from looking at past history, agree with me on that?
They just avoided
They avoided stuff. And it looks like the people from the nursing board were at these meetings. But also, there's a mention of x-ray, so apparently we were using x-ray equipment somehow.
Or there is the potential to use it.
X-ray, yes. I guess it cleansed the hair better.
One of the things that, just to kind of bring this full circle, and I really appreciate that. I love to have the historical background, David. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to reading that. One of the things that I kind of am a little focused on is maybe just trying to task out a few things so we can make sure that we're very productive in addition to having some guests as invited. Feel free to invite who you'd like, but I do want to kind of be a little bit more targeted on some tasks. And so one of the things that I'd really like all of us to make sure that we do is when you do look at those terminology pages, if there's something that you don't feel you get, like if you're not sure what an extraction is, or you just really don't know what abylated laser is or whatever, would you make a note of that? So then at least the ones that you feel like you don't understand, we can all agree that that's, we can figure out what it is, and then all agree that that's what it's going to represent to us. Because for me, I've been pretty point blank. The concept of paramedical it escapes me a little bit. That escapes me. I don't understand how somebody's medical or paramedical. I don't get that kind of concept. I don't understand why somebody wants to say that they're a half professional. That's what that says to me. And so I don't know why. So for me personally, I'd like it if there was, if there is something that we're not understanding, to at least bring it to everybody's attention so we can get a good understanding. And one of the keys of that is understanding pH. So, I know that when we probably have a pretty good concept of it, but I think when Vince needs more input on understanding percentages and pH, that for me is where Vince is going to kind of look to us to fill in those definitions. And conversely, Vince is really exceptional at giving us kind of the overall legal environment and how things function legally or process-wise. And so I think symbiotically that's going to come into play, because as we're trying to write out how we envision a second tier, however that may be, it involves both defining and cross-referencing your other regulatory.
I think what we might want to do, Alex, is over the next meeting or even two, is start to bring together what tasks have to be decided.
Yeah.
And the idea is that one is the decision points. There's a roadmap, basically, a PERT chart. There are critical decisions that have to be made. Do we do it? Don't we do it? And so the issues are, I was hoping in the expectation papers, what you expected out of this committee, some of that can be gleaned. I think some did come forward. Now we're starting to talk about how deep we want to go. What is it legitimate? What are the problems in the way? What are the legal ramifications? And what does it do for the industry long term? So I think one of the things we want to do is start thinking about in our own minds, what do we think we have to do individually? Tasks.
Yeah.
And then once you get those, we can then basically negotiate what the 3, 4, 5 task list looks like and prioritize them as to what has to be done first, and that's the decision that leads us to the next task. So that, I think the next meeting, maybe if you guys can do that, is think it through and say, what do you think are the 3 or 4 major tasks we should
I kind of was hoping that we could just do a little bit of that right now.
Well, we still have time.
Just a few minutes. And in line with that is I kind of like to play devil's advocate a little bit. I know you guys have seen that over the years in board meetings, because if you throw it all out and play devil's advocate, sometimes like what I call the DA, if somebody will be willing to take the criticism or the brunt of being a devil's advocate, it really makes your viable options look that much more viable. So in other words, if you're in a disagreement with somebody, sure, you can punch them in the mouth and that'll end your disagreement, but it's not a viable option. So all of a sudden it makes communicating with that person a little bit more successful, because you realize that some options aren't going to work. So for me personally, we increased the minimum hours from 6 to 900. So how come we're not just taking the manual and saying that this is 300 hours? Like, why aren't we just saying that the 600 hours was the old book, and now by making it 900 hours, it's just using the new book.
Yeah.
Why do we? I mean, to play devil's advocate, why aren't
Let
we?
me argue the case, because that was my first task
Okay.
when I came to the agency. Is we had to do the regulation review, and we had to do it in high speed, and there was so much problem with the book that we had to do a 10-year review of everything. And the three messages I heard, without a doubt, and I'm very big at least my reputation's been that I'll get the crap off the table and get to the bottom line. The bottom line, what I heard, is the school's complaining. We don't have enough time to teach the basic course material because the industry is becoming more sophisticated and it's harder to teach all the parts of the basic stuff. Okay. That was the first priority criteria that was laid on the table. The second priority had to do with the staff complaining to the board that the students coming out of the schools and even 2 or 3 years in the industry don't know the law. They just don't study the law enough. They were out of 1,800 hours, they were doing 20 hours of law review. You can't even remember what anything at 20 hours. I mean, you got to, it's repetitive stuff, reminders and stuff. The third one was one that I infused, after looking at the charge of the agency, that we have a extremely strong responsibility to protect the health and safety of the citizens. That was the original reason we were installed, and we seem to have wandered from that priority. So I made it a big issue, and the board bought into it big time because I got phenomenal support, of that infection control is the new phrase in the country about instead of just washing things, sanitize.
Right.
There was a perception that sanitizing was using pledge and making the table pretty.
Dust-free. I love
and
manifesting the infection control.
Yeah, what we did was we shifted, and that came from my background of overseeing San Diego County's Health and Human Services Agency and all the health delivery systems there, that I saw that sanitation was an old-fashioned term that really didn't describe what the heck we were dealing with today. And I was thinking what we're dealing with is these vicious diseases that eat people, and you can't stop it except for cutting off limbs and half their bodies in order to kill it. And so my sense is that we need, as an agency like us, we needed to prioritize that as one of our number one objectives. That went big time over throughout the state. Everybody loves that idea, especially the health department, the state health department, and the legislature likes that. We're protecting their clients, their population. So that's what we put in the 300 hours. So we really didn't make any room for that. We were just polishing what we should have been doing earlier. Now we're in a position, if we were to add the next level, really, then that book becomes a guiding source of 900 to whatever the heck you want to go to. So that's where I'm at with that. And hopefully that answers the question of the
For sure.
So that's where I see it, is that we've now polished. The schools know I have that priority, and the priority is representative of what the board itself is asking for, and I enforce it. So all their new curriculums have 40 to 50 hours of infection control training that's guaranteed that I have to be able to see, and 40 to 50 hours worth of law training that is easily seen in the curriculum. And then they can do the other 200 hours any way they see fit, but they have to meet the standards of the curriculum that's there. I would like to see, when we get into the next level, if we expand our options, is really take a look at what guideline are we going to follow. Who are we going to follow into this new territory?
So I don't personally think we can follow anybody just yet. I think what we've been provided with the Utah, Virginia, and District of Columbia, I don't think those are models that
you like, and it's not enough.
I don't think those are models that are going to work in that.
I don't think they're integrating now.
That's my perception too.
I think all three of them have weaknesses and I think all of them are excessive. Like, I don't mean to be rude, but the point of the law is to still be. Is not to impede business. And I mean, you look at some of those, right? I just think it impedes business. I'm not all pro that. I mean, if anything, I'd like to see some things weeded out. But more importantly for me to also is, and you kind of alluded to this, Vince, it's not just that you want to, I don't know how to say this well, like, if the industry is moving in this second tier, aren't there ways that you can do steps? Like, are you so focused that the whole thing has to come together as a unit, or are there ways that you can build in steps? And what I mean by that is, like, here's a physician that's saying that interning might be a successful way to qualify an existing skilled applicant. That's kind of what I think about it in interning.
Yeah.
You've got somebody showing up at the door with a set of skills, but now with this interning, you're bringing them to a higher set of skills. So aren't there ways
Yes.
that we can introduce and then elaborate?
There's two ways to do change, organizational change, and what you're doing is organizational change for the culture and operation of the industry in general. So there's two ways to do that. One is you build the map. You design the whole system.
Yeah.
Then there's two ways to implement it now: incrementally or all at once, shock and awe kind of approach. My sense is when I do organizational change, like here in the agency, I built the vision for where I wanted to go. So in my head, everything I saw when it was perfect, this is what it would look like. By the way, we're getting pretty close to the perfection. And then you say, in doing that, what do I got to build? And then prioritize, like building a cathedral. What's the foundation have to be? What do I got to put in place before anything else will take? So what we're going through right now is you'll have the option of doing it all at once, one big giant sweep, but that the legislature may say, oh my God, we can't deal with this. Or you incrementally feed it to them through a period, but you got to be very patient, Jeanette, very patient, my dear. And that is, it may be a 10-year cycle to get all the parts and pieces in place. So what you would do is design it. So say I'm not here more than 3 years or 4 years. Someone picking up the reins and running will have the plan, will have the roadmap, and know that step 3 is we have to put these NRSs in place, and those NRSs include how do we approve equipment, what's the procedure, what's the standards, what's the philosophy we're going to use behind it. And whether it's Vince's or yours or anybody else's.
Or even these people.
Yeah. The third step will be understood we got to do that. It may vary based on who the players are, but they'll do that. So the answer to you, yes, we can incrementally build the system, the perfect picture, but we need to know what the perfect picture looks like in our minds. At least the 4 of us can walk out of this room when we make the recommendation, what the vision is.
And that's kind of what I wanted to try to get to today, is because I feel like if we don't say it, I feel like we're just meeting. And we're just hashing out a bunch of dialogue. I mean, I think it's important.
I think we're making
me.
I think we're making progress.
I'm not saying that we're not making progress. I just, like, do you even want a second tier? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And why is that? I mean, what is it? I mean, just off the top of your head, not so much people have told you, but why are you focused on a second tier?
Because of public safety and misrepresentation.
Well, we all want public safety. I mean, that's inherent in our mission. I mean, we wouldn't be here.
Look, I've been in the middle of the trenches of it, and you've got people crossing over and trying to do stuff in the salons that they're doing in the Medi spas.
So crossover.
And it's a real big concern.
Eliminate crossover.
Because they feel, well, I'm doing it there, I'm trained to do this, I've got a aesthetics license, they're calling me an esthetician over there, so I'm an esthetician, so I should be able to be doing this.
Okay.
And
what else?
That's a great concern. My main concern, the focus of this is public safety, making sure they're...
We're all there.
I think what he's saying, Alex, maybe it'll help you. He sees that the tools and the environment are changing and he sees all these bleeding conditions going on
Okay.
that used to be okay in old times.
Right.
Now that's not. So in order to protect public safety, you got to deal with all these bleeding things that are being
Okay.
new manufactured products, new techniques, new styles, new trends.
Manufacturers selling equipment to estheticians that they shouldn't be using. Should we look into this and make it okay for them to use them? Number one. Number two is, for example, you've got people doing procedures that we don't know they're qualified to be doing. And the way things are progressing, we need to take hold because it's going to get so far out of our hands that we're not going to have any control over it.
See, that's
Which we're
kind
losing
of why
control now.
I want the second tier. Is I want that second tier because it kind of seems like that freight train is now picking up some speed, and I feel like we're losing not just a revenue source, but we're losing. What's the word?
I have issue
where
focusing
you
on
have-
that revenue source. That's not what we exist for.
No,
We're not here to even look at revenue source.
No, but what I mean to say is we're not capturing that cosmetological establishment to regulate properly. So
Well,
when I say
that's
revenue, I
okay.
mean
Maybe
That's all right.
maybe you should reverse that. Maybe our regulations and rules inhibit business growth because of the way they're
yeah,
designed.
I do.
That's
I do.
okay.
And if you want to allow business growth to continue to grow, you must make sure it's safe and well designed so it can grow in a productive manner, not eventually
Right.
collapse
Right.
because of damage.
And so, what about you, Jeanette? Like, do you envision a second tier? I mean, is it a focus for you? Do you see a third tier? Do you see just a first tier, but with a couple different, parameters associated to it? Some restrictions on certain folks, or?
What the hell do you want?
Yeah, I think it's, obviously stated, that's exactly what we're going through. It's going. I feel like we're very late. So I want to put the systems in place. I want to have a target. I want to break it down, and I want to tackle it.
So for me, tackling it is the number one thing is proprietorship of aesthetics. You're saying that we want this second tier, so let's own the word esthetician.
We do.
Let's own it. Well, I'm just saying,
what I
let's
was
put it
saying.
out
But
there.
it's bleeding right
Like,
now.
to me, when we start talking about our map, we're filling up our car with gas to hit the road means owning the proprietary name esthetician. So if you're seeing the word esthetician, that implies licensure, and it implies something else. And what is that something else? Generally, that something else has implied cosmetological establishment. That's what that has implied for me. But now I think this second tier opens up that licensed esthetician, and when I say esthetician, I also mean cosmetologist because they can perform aesthetics, and I try to make that real clear in
But
my dialogue.
I'd like to. Yeah, we need a distinction because I don't feel cosmetologists should be able to practice in second tier unless they take a certain additional number of hours.
Yeah, I think that the cosmetologist can participate in that advanced aesthetics
They take
curriculum.
300 or 400 hours, whatever. Yeah, they
Yeah.
take additional.
I don't think there's a lot of variance in the thought process that I'm hearing.
Of any of us, really.
What I'm concerned, since I'm not the key player in here, I'm the support staff. One of the areas that I'm concerned about, so to express it for you, is I don't see in the state of Nevada a clear-cut ownership of certain activities, and instead I see different agencies ignoring them because of people's pressure or whatever. And what I mean by that is that we have our estheticians are being used by other licensing professional individuals without authorization and with no controls. They don't have controls on their side of the equation, and we have no guidance that we've been giving them. We've ignored the challenge. We say that's a medical procedure. We wash our hands of it. Period. We don't negotiate. We don't interface with them. There's no clear understanding. I see us in a lot of ways in this particular area of medical spas and medical as a feeder school for that higher level of personal services under the medical umbrella. What I mean by that is everybody goes to high school. That's the cosmetology degree. You can't be one unless you do. The next level up, if you want to be a specialist, over and above the basics, then you have to go to more training, more education, more apprenticeships, or whatever you want to call them, to become qualified to safely deliver services that are in between the basic system we offer and the medical system that offers. Nobody's controlling the middle part. And what's happening is it's dictating its own rules. That's what I see. And my concern is that's got to stop. So the second tier for me, or that concept, is to draw the lines of saying what our license can do. That should be close enough to where it's logical to the other side of the equation. The medical side would say, that's a perfect feeder system for me to get qualified people coming in so I can train them my way.
Right.
That's what I see is going on right here. Is a little bit of what you say is capturing the aesthetics title, because we've adopted all the levels within that system that does that. Secondly, it provides an environment in which people can grow to higher income levels and more business. And we don't stabilize like the barbering board has done to itself. They put themselves in an encapsulated group.
Right.
They can never grow. They can't. They don't. And it doesn't.
That's an excellent observation.
And in our case, we grow. We've been continuing to grow. In spite of recession, we've grown 10% over the last 3 years. In spite of recession. That's a difficult growth. We used to be 8%.
But we didn't box ourselves in.
We're not boxed in. And we're now opening the doors to keep us from being boxed, but we want to do it very, very carefully and very intelligently.
So for me, one of the key steps is to try to figure out how our laws can reflect the licensing of the individual separate from the licensing of the establishment. Because right now that's not the case.
How do you mean? I don't understand.
Well, right now the case is if you're exercising your individual license, you're within a licensed establishment.
That's easy to change. It's a couple words in the law.
But what I mean is, for me, when we start talking about our roadmap, not only do we fill up our car with that gas, not only do we get that skill and own that proprietary name, aesthetics, but then we now have to try to figure out how to separate that license from the establishment, because that will then enable us to create the bridges with whatever setting that individual licensee wants to be in.
Let me give you an example of what could happen from that.
Okay.
Is right now our concern is, it drives me crazy and you guys crazy, that in one building they may have 4 different kind of licensing operations, and I've got to try to figure out how in the heck I get them to find out if they're complying or not.
Right.
One of the ways would be, one of the concerns that you have is in the definition of a licensee can only work within an establishment. That could be qualified as, it can only work in an establishment unless Section 2, 3, and 4 is working under the supervision of a physician. And we define direct supervision, not them.
Right.
The problem we have with the medical field now, 30 minutes, 30 miles seems to be okay. It's not okay with me, because if you get hurt today, somebody qualified needs to be able to be there to deal with it. That's an issue. The other thing is we want to protect against the accidental release of control we have now, like the 911 mobile thing. They wanted to say they could operate anywhere at their disposal, and we would have no control over it. That's what the bottom line was. The answer was no. We already have regulations in place to deal with hospitals and clients and things. It might have to be rewritten slightly. But those are the accidental deficits that occur when you change things. The threading issue is a classic example. The legislature changed it thinking they weren't hurting much. They destroyed the threading issue. I have to rebuild the whole thing. We've got to start from scratch almost to rebuild it. That's months and months and months of work to put things in place. Accidentally hurt. That's my concern as we change the laws to allow certain activities to occur in other places, that we build in the control to make sure this other part doesn't get screwed up by accident. That's the bigger concern. And my sense is that as we go through this, we will see that. And then we drag in a lawyer, whether we hire one to do nothing but help us in that, or we get the AG's office to help us. My sense is I'm not sure they have the time nor the willingness to do what we've got to do. So we may have to hire an attorney, and I've been starting to look for them, that can actually sit down and work with us in detail for several weeks, where they do nothing but design all the different changes that have to come, wording processes that match the desires of the board that this committee will recommend to. So I see it as the same way you do, Alex, except I see all the complex issues underneath. And I apologize if it sounds demeaning. I didn't mean to. But you're seeing the bigger picture, and I'm seeing all the details underneath it.
Well, and then I just really want to make sure that we're kind of on the same page when we start talking about some of these things, because there's some, like even dermaplaning. I mean, dermaplaning is shaving. So if you're allowed to remove hair with wax, where you can tear the skin,
We're not allowed to shave.
how I know. So there's kind of these
Barbers
odd,
we can't.
these odd things.
So can
that
barbers do
come
dermaplaning?
into play.
So the issue is, see, what you're feeling is the old paradigm and the restrictions the old paradigm puts around the
Yeah.
thing.
And that's
And
what
you're
I
trying
mean
to change
by
that.
inhibiting business. I don't mean it as revenue stream. I just mean
Absolutely,
it
yes. I'm so.
This
and
is
I'm going to stay that straight and narrow and make sure this way nobody can ever accuse. Let's say go in and say, well, the committee was trying to create more revenue sources. That's not what our.
Well, actually,
it may be a byproduct.
Might be a byproduct,
Yeah.
but that's not.
That's your not intent.
I'm not
You're
I
dealing
have
with
no
the other.
intention and no interest in creating byproduct. My interest is in public safety, confidence. That's
Yeah.
my
I
number
want
one.
qualified personnel. I mean,
Well, that falls under. That's my only concern.
I feel like if somebody's going to call themselves something, there's ownership to
Totally.
that has some responsibility, because if
And
they do
if
something
the byproduct
wrong,
is.
it reflects on
But if the
my
byproduct
license.
is extra, better revenue source, fine, that's great, that's terrific. But that's not my concern. I don't.
And I would like to see.
Yeah. I just don't want to inhibit it.
That's
Alex,
not
I
my
think we may
intention
be
either.
creating a solution to what's going on between the MAs and the doctors.
Can I say one thing really quick?
Sure.
That was part of the argument they used, by the way, with the threading early on. That these people were coming here doing it, and we're inhibiting them from having income because they don't want to go to school to become estheticians to do that, and that was part of the argument.
And our requirement was strict enough that they had to become full cosmetologists or estheticians in order to do it.
yeah, and
which
we were
is in the
inhibiting
eight-
theirs. Revenue.
And so what my solution was, I was throwing out was, we build a lesser included license. If that's all you're licensed to do, that you still got to have 150 hours of practical training, so you know how to do it without hurting someone. That was the key.
And
'Cause
the legislature wanted a lot of things because all these businesses could be opening up, but we're hurting revenue. sources.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what the
So
dialogue
that
was. on.
bothered me a lot because they were using that. So when you bring up that argument,
Yeah, we got to be careful with that, because at the legislature, the reason it went down the way it did is they did not want to take the heat from a cultural discussion. And we were limiting these folks who didn't want to become cosmetologists. They only wanted to do threading. And so that was their solution. Instead of giving us time to work up an alternative that would have been much more receptive, we were caught in this trading over the budget stuff that votes were being traded back and forth, and we were the sort of like the ping pong ball bouncing until they said, okay, we can live with that. No one asked me to say, can you live with it? The answer was, in fact, in the testimony I actually said, I don't think it's a workable plan, but we'll obey whatever the legislature decides. I'll do it for you. That's what my speech was, actual speech to the compromise committee. And all the assembly people shook their head like, we know this is going down the tube. The Senate were convinced that it was the right thing to do. They really never faced any of the real issues. But getting back to what I was talking about,
sorry, I just wanted to.
I like the fact that Dr. Benaldi talks about his personal view, and I know it's third hand, but personal view about being safe and using only the right kind of people. This may well provide the vehicle for the feeder system that now the doctors can use without violating the law or game plan. Because we have a second tier estheticians that allow them for the training that sets the stage, and all they need is the last step, which under the physician's training or whatever it is they require. And I see that as a possibility that could work. I don't know if the medical people or the nursing board or any of those folks will see that as an advantage. I'm hoping they will. The logic is that they're
Nursing
smart.
board might fight us.
Yeah. The doctors may like the idea.
They will.
Nursing board will say you're just trying to eliminate nurses.
Or reduce their
Their
need.
scope of, yeah.
So, because before doctors would have a few nurses in office, now they have maybe one and use MAs.
Yeah, so it's a competition, and that's a revenue, that's a dollar thing. We're infringing in their territory to create jobs of their own profession.
I have a suggestion on the MA thing. It's like, if they realize, and like you had brought up, that some things are not covered under their scope of practice, and then there's the areas of mission and all that, but if they realize that they had no training required, no schooling on infectious control, on any of these other things, if the insurance companies realize that, I think if they were pushed and it was out there
If enough lawsuits happen, but
Yeah,
publicly, then I think that they would be behind pushing for legislation on wanting to have a clinical esthetician. I don't see a direct conflict with nurses, since nurses aren't currently hired to do laser. They're only hired to do mostly injectables, as
But
far as I know.
I think what the
Unless they're in dermal.
yeah, what was implied was that they want to be
They
exclusively licensed.
But their cost is too high.
that's why they're not using them to do it. They don't want to.
But they're not now. So
That's the reason. The reason is the doctors don't want to pay because they're higher paid.
yeah, I understand that, but they're not now. So I really don't think it's an issue. I don't think nurses are scrambling to go into plastic
Laser.
surgeons' offices or to do these. I mean, I think they like to assist in surgery. I think they like to do injectables or whatever you call that, extractions.
I will.
Excisions, yeah.
Excisions.
When we have the next meeting here, it was too short notice for getting Chris to come. My friend Chris is an attorney, he represents the insurance companies. So he has some insight.
Whereas what you are saying, though, is that estheticians are clamoring for those jobs.
Exactly.
Because I personally was clamored for it because I wanted the experience and the knowledge.
I'm a little confused with nurses anyway, because they claim great shortage of nurses in the Vegas area, Nevada in general, and yet they don't hire nurses that are qualified past their nursing boards. They won't hire them unless they have a year or 2 years of experience. Now, if they're that tight, why aren't they hiring them?
Well, actually, my perspective is it's a step down for nurses. Because I have nurses in my family, and if they get paid $30 to $40 an hour, and then they're working per diem, so now they're at $60 to $80 an hour for 3 days' work because they worked graveyard or whatever their deal is, why would they want to go work for a doc at $20 an hour?
No, what I'm talking about is I have a cousin's cousin, fourth level cousin, who just qualified for nursing school, just got her past her bars in both California, or whatever you call it, California and in Nevada, can't get a job. And she's a qualified nurse. She's passed the bar, passed the boards. How come she can't get a job? Well, you don't have a year's experience already. Well, where am I going to get it if somebody don't hire me? And she's finally, you know where you got it? The jail. Worst job in the world probably, but the jail. What do they do? All they do is take blood samples for drunk drivers and narcotic samples for people arrested for under the influence of narcotics. That's
it's
it.
like putting them in a rural setting.
Yeah, so my sense is I hear all the rhetoric, but I don't see in practicality what it looks like.
One of the
The
websites
nursing
I looked
issue is
at
that one of those issues that I
had nurses doing appeals.
What?
It was an RN who does the appeals, the really heavy duty stuff.
Right. So,
Not
and I think
in-house.
that is what I'm trying to bring to the point is that's where our division line lies. You know, when you're doing clinical esthetician or creating this clinical esthetician, it's a step up.
Yeah.
But yet it's very affordable for doctors. Where you have nurses, and it's a step down. Well, we're going to do now these minimal waxing and
Not about waxing. They're not doing.
I know,
I'm
but-
talking about
Botox.
Creating that
lasers,
division line.
Botox, the Juviter, the fillers.
Yeah.
creating that division line should be pretty simplified.
I agree with you. I agree with David, though, in the sense that I think the nurses will balk at it. The doctors will think it's a wonderful idea. Maybe.
We're
Not,
talking about the
not
nurses
if you
board,
present
not
it
the
properly.
nurses.
I don't think so. I think if you present it properly.
Well, it's a guess.
Well, you're talking about an income way where why should they make this, they can be making that. The reason doctors are using the estheticians is they can pay them not that.
That's right. And then you're not going to get rid of all the estheticians.
Of course
Currently,
not.
there's so many in place.
What I'm saying is that the nursing board feels that nurses should be paid $60 to $80 an hour, but anything, those types of things, they should be doing. And do not reduce it down
Instead
to
of paying
But they're
$30
not.
an hour for a MA.
So
let's
it's too
just-
late.
Well, how would Dr. Bernalde, I mean, I don't want you to speak for him per se,
Oh.
we can certainly take it off the tape, but, you know, I don't think he's going to want to be told that, oh, by the way, estheticians can't inject under any circumstances anymore.
You don't ever tell a doctor anything. You
Right.
ask his opinion, and then you let
that's
him.
the problem.
But what I mean to say is I can hear the nursing board suggesting that only nurses are allowed to inject.
They have. That's where it started.
Right.
They're the ones that started
Right.
investigations.
So
Right.
I hear both sides now happening, and so how do you?
I don't see a clinical esthetician ever injecting. I don't think that's.
No, that's your view. The
That's your
doctors,
view. They
some
are now.
doctors
But-
will
Doing
say,
it
you
now.
know,
But really,
will say yes.
Ethical docs are not letting their.
Realistically, it's happening all over the place.
no, but I think
Now,
I
don't get
know if
mixed
that's
up.
True. I think
Don't get
that's-
mixed up with qualifying it. All of the doctors, which means the good ones, bad ones, in between ones. The ethical ones are all going to operate in a way that we all think are pretty cool.
But I,
And we're going to think a bunch of them are making money. They're making these medical spas. They got 6 of them. The big deal is to make $10 million a year, not worry about who's injecting. And that's what they do.
But you're probably.
But I was a qualified injector. I was very
Yeah.
qualified. Like to numb the excision site, I did the best job with the least amount of education. I mean, with the least amount of ingredient. So I mean, I did a great job, and there was
It's a
nothing
trainable
wrong
experience.
with me doing intramuscular injections. I knew how to do that. I did them properly.
Look surprised.
And I did not bruise people. I did not miscalculate the amount of the injectable. I mean, there were multiple things that had to be injected. Now, did I want to inject Rejuviderm into somebody's nasal labial fold? No. And would I ask to do that? No. But I'm just not seeing a clear rule that says no injectables. Like, I don't see that coming down the pipe.
They left it. Well, they're probably going to have to eventually. But I'll tell you what. Right now, that they purposely left it so vague, the
Make
new
the call.
legislation, so they can rein it in. There was from the AG's office, an investigating some med spas down in Las Vegas that had
Botox
Botox and
injections.
stuff being done, and guess what? Those people were not prosecuted because there's that loophole. And the thing is, they said the MA that they can't treat. They can give like flu shots, those things. Then they that meeting them they denied MA doing any kind of injections whatsoever. Well, see, Clark County Health District uses MAs to do flu shots during flu shot season.
Now they had an anomaly. They had.
But I don't even
And so they
see
had-
why an esthetician couldn't give a flu shot. I mean, once you're trained on giving flu shots,
That's the issue, Alex. The magic words are:
That's what
what's
makes
the
medication.
training? What's the training for injections?
This is the point, and this is what I think is where we should be going at this point. Before we do the breakdown on all the other little things that are, public safety is very good at, but where are we going? So nurses, I think, should have in our minds whether it's right or wrong at this point, but just to put it down on paper so we can kind of research it.
We don't.
What is
But
there?
we have no right to say what the. We need to bring
No.
somebody from the nursing board in here.
I'm not
That's what
saying
we're
that.
doing
I'm
this.
saying in our minds, what do we picture nurses doing in a medical situation where we would be present,
No,
and what would our job be?
That's a good idea, Jeanette. But what I think we might want to do is say where we would like to see it go, and then say who are the naysayers, who are the objectors, and do we have to redesign it where we want to go, or do we deal with the naysayers? My sense is that what Alex is asking is pretty much sort of the same question you just asked, and that is, what's the vision? Where do we, when it all is done and it's almost perfect, what is it going to look like? And then we backtrack to what's our first step. I don't know if I'll have the time. I'll try to, though, sit down and write construct a vision. What it looks like when it's perfect. what would feel like, what the track record for career development would look like, and then try to identify those side issues that said who are the naysayers in the gang? Is it the doctors? Is it our estheticians that don't want to do that? They don't want to go to school anymore? Or is it the nurses? Who gets in the way?
They don't want to go to school anymore. That is a big
That's a big
deal.
issue. But when I say
big deal.
the issue for continuing education, that is the biggest hurdle.
Big deal.
Assemblyman Settlemyer, is that what the name is? That's running for Senate up here. He blocked it because his wife personally did not want to go back to take 4 units of school.
See, that's an ethics issue to me and conflict of interest.
She personally did not. See, they live outside the main.
You'll see in here, they were trying to get...
that alone stopped.
The Senate bill in here has
There's
argued...
a lot of things
Yeah,
we're going
so-
through. One person
Yeah.
has been
so,
the driving force.
So the issue is how do you get around these one people? When I teach in some of the classes, how to neutralize the naysayers. In other words, when you manage a movement of an item forward, you take a look and identify the naysayers. Who are going to object? The best condition is if you can neutralize them to be quiet. So there's no argument, and it goes through. And the issue is that's what we have to do. If we get our vision developed, we figure out what we want to do, then the next step is identifying the steps, then identifying the objectors and the supporters. And then the neutralizers, we just want to be quiet.
Well, I think for me, just in a nutshell, is I want a licensed esthetician in that medical setting.
I hear that's what you're saying.
That's what I want. I mean,
And
my
David
big
is-
nutshell.
David
what can they do?
Regardless of
Whatever
what
it
you
is
want to
that
call it,
we
I
decide.
don't want them escaping regulatory compliance.
Because that's what's happening now.
That's what I don't.
I think it's a mute point. Of course, that's why we're even here. But what do you see them doing as a medical esthetician or a clinical esthetician?
I can see them doing a wide variety of tasks.
Do you see them doing injectables?
I can see them assisting the reason why I did injectables when I worked for a practice and I worked for 4 years was to get that doctor in and out.
Right.
So that I identified where that doctor was going to be working according to chart notes. That doctor came in and said, yes, that's the area, drew that little pencil line around the lesion. I prepped that patient with all their paperwork, their signatures, all the setup, the Mayo stand was set for that physician, so that physician came right back in, took another minute, left, and moved on to the room. And I think that's the only
They're just
thing
going
that
into the
doctors
supply
want.
room.
Doctors want to see 50 patients a day. And so if they can say, hey, you do this, and you do this, and I'll do this, if that gets me in and out of that patient room the fastest, then that's how he's going to delegate.
But when
That's my
coming
opinion.
alongside of in the medical spa surrounding, though, and trying to keep in vision with an esthetician, what do you see a clinical esthetician doing?
Pre and post.
Pre and post op? Okay.
Pre and post.
You know what? That's why I think in this conversation, I want a doctor sitting here who does
Yeah,
that kind
because
of work.
they can help us decide.
I want, and I'd like some. You know what?
But
I
those
want a
players
concept.
are going to come in. I mean,
but don't you think we should have a vision first?
No, I think we need to be bouncing off there because we're going to create a vision, and it may be totally out of line.
I don't think so. I think you're going to find that we're right in.
Why is an institution doing pre and post op?
Well, because that's what I used to do. I used to do pre and post.
Yeah, but then you got a biased position because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Didn't say it's right or
But
wrong.
I was working in
I
that
think that-
environment,
No.
and that's what they needed us to do.
I recognize you worked in the environment.
But you know
that
what?
doesn't make it right or wrong.
Right or wrong.
It's just that's what you did.
But
You know what?
pre and post is still
I
associated
think
with
they should be
beauty.
doing the more aggressive.
Let's step
skin
back a minute
treatments.
because I've run police departments, many
Yeah.
of them, and my colleagues would say, "Well, this is the way we do it." No, we don't. That's the way you did it. And I recrafted. Same when I came here. That this is the way they did it, and I was bucking the mainstream most of the time. But now we feel comfortable with it. The issue is not judging by what we know only and what we did because we were comfortable with it, but take a look at the whole thing. I have no objection to be honest with you, of injections if they're properly trained and the doctors are willing to take the responsibility and the nursing board doesn't file a suit every 15
See, I think
minutes.
that's going too far. I think.
Now I don't have a problem with that, and of course I don't have any risk. I'm not one of them. The bottom line though is that I don't want to close that until we have a rational argument against that, and then we close it off. but
Yeah.
not prior, because that's how we would have never got to the moon had we done that.
And I understand what you're saying, but describe pre and post.
Well, I just think that that's a wide range of things,
Well, pre and
depending on the
post
specialty.
laser. Pre and post laser is what I usually did.
Well, number one, you're going to have to do the Fitzpatrick scale. Why does a physician need to do that? Why? The esthetician can do the Fitzpatrick scale. So right from the get-go, your esthetician is leading the treatment protocol
right?
based on what they've ascertained in the Fitzpatrick scale.
Which is the level of pigment in the
I'm
skin.
trying to agree with what it
Yeah,
is.
so right off the bat, you don't even need a physician present just yet.
Okay.
And then now you're gonna pre the skin, so you're gonna make sure that they're acclimated.
Let me ask it, because I think it'll help in the vision building.
Yeah.
When you write down what you think the outer limits of the vision should look like, what are those things that are negative
The
things?
outer limits. That's good.
you can't support because you don't think there's a good rationale behind it. And same way with you, Alex.
I love the outer limits.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's each
And
come
then
to
we
different-
work back
Yeah,
to what we
different-
can live with on a long-term basis.
Yeah.
That eliminates the possibility of losing ideas that we just didn't consider because we never felt that way about. I'll tell you, the uniforms in the office is a classic example. I've had 1,000 years of experience with uniforms. I was totally opposed to the idea. I told Gloria, ain't gonna work. Been there, done that. So I said, but I'm going to tell you what, because it's an outer limit idea, I don't know if the board will support this issue, but I'll take the heat, we'll try it for 6 months and see what happens. I was wrong. I had to eat my words, because in fact it did help. The board liked it, the customers liked it, the operations people like it, it all worked. What the hell am I going to get in the way for now?
Well, and it leveled everybody.
Everybody now looks and feels.
Everybody is now level. So I'm
You
your
see what I mean?
superior and
And
you're
that
my
was me
superior.
having to swallow my pride and say, I had 40 years experience in this business and I know what the hell I'm talking about.
And I understand that.
Yeah,
Because
and I want
I
I'd
like
to
that
write a
outer limits
breakdown
idea.
of what
And then we'll work backwards and build
what
it in.
you consider pre and post op.
Yeah, I'm with him.
And you do yours on what you pre and post
Yeah,
op. Separately.
and I don't care. It's just,
Well,
you guys-
you know, yeah.
But I guess to bring it back home is what I'd like to still hear from Jeanette and David is I told Vince that what I want to see is a licensed individual,
Yeah.
even if they're in a medical setting. And that's
Absolutely.
why I see it as a clinical licensing, because for me, medical implies diagnosis. And that's why you are not allowed to be a medical esthetician, but you can be an upgraded second-tier esthetician if you're working in a medical setting. You just have a little bit of different tweaked guidelines.
Right.
That's what my vision is.
So right now,
But those guidelines are what we're looking for.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, we
That's
have to
what's gonna
create
come.
that. We
Yes,
create
that's
that.
what's
That's
gonna
right.
come.
That's what I'm
But
excited about.
that's
Let's
for these
put it down on
discussions.
paper right now.
We're getting a little more. We're getting a little more.
That's
into
why
it.
this is a helpful. We are making progress because we're beginning now to focus on the vision and then the tasks that would be included.
Now, where does that differ for you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't
It
now.
does not at all.
Okay, so
Originally, when I heard you guys speak, they're different.
yeah.
But now that you guys are talking and talking, it's slowly moving together because his
The
concerns are
understanding
being
of what
resolved. Your
And
concerns are resolved.
When I say licensed esthetician, I only isolate esthetician because that's the area
Corporate
that's
track.
moving forward. Realistically, there's no advanced nail technology book.
No.
The only text is the standard for the nail technology, and there's no advanced
But there's no
cosmetology.
requirement.
They're not
And
going
the
in-
only advanced
There's no
things that,
training
hair,
happening.
that cosmetologists do are maybe they work with the doctors in hair transplant.
An example,
They hire
we
them
just
there.
expanded-
But they're not doing anything out of
Right.
scope.
We just expanded the nail technology by 100 hours for the same reason we expanded the esthetician.
Nevada law.
Nevada law and infection control. We want to be sure. 15 hours is not enough to know what the law is. So, you know.
So for me, a cosmetologist who wants to practice second-tier aesthetics in that medical setting or non-traditional spa setting, if you want to go with that direction, they have additional training to bring them to practice that aesthetics, that advanced aesthetics component
Right.
of their license. So when I say clinical cosmetology, I kind of only include those two licensing, not instructors, because for me, an instructor is licensed to teach, not holding the skill set required for the second tier licensing.
So you're thinking they're going to achieve that by internship and then come back for testing?
Well, no, we haven't decided any of
I'm
that.
not sure how I envision that.
But I don't
just
see. Here's an example. The schools may not be involved at all.
Right.
That's first issue.
Right.
They may or may not. If they want to get into second tier instruction, they have to now align themselves with some of these other agencies that teach those kind of things. Instructors that teach those kind of things have to be different than the instructors in the basic system.
Right.
Those are all the part of the regulation process of putting
Right.
it together. What I think the schools will do is say, that's too complex for us, we'll stay with our territory. A couple of them might, like Lincoln schools might say, we'll create a second tier education system.
And capture all.
And they have the money to start doing that, putting it together. They will look at the curriculum, and they will copy probably, Milady or one of those
Right.
operating.
But you know what's going to happen is some of the teachers that are going to be maybe a little bit more aggressive are going to go to those advanced schools,
That's right.
go back to the school and say, you know what, I've been trained in that already. Why don't we offer that as a
That's
separate
right.
deal?
It creates
individual deal?
the industry has to create that. So what we would do on the first pass, if we decide to go that way, we might opt for the certification training by these agencies because we looked at them, we think that they're teaching the right kind of things in the right way, and we're going to accept that. Then as the other schools say, gee, we could do that too. It might take them 2 years, 3 years to catch up, and then we would authorize them to do it by going through a curriculum review and what have you. So I don't see them being left out. They're in or out based on how much they want to get involved in and how much willing they're to train their staff, etc. So I don't see a negative there at this point.
When I spoke to the gal who runs the Virginia, and she's going to be in Seattle, by the way, the gal who runs the Virginia program, your comparable, your
Equivalent, yeah.
She said that the number one debate that we're going to get is probably going to come from the schools, because the schools that can't compete in that clinical component will lose students to the schools that can compete.
Absolutely.
So she actually said we're probably not going to get a lot of refuting from the nursing board or from the physician board or whatever. Where we're probably going to experience is within our own licensed schools.
What if it don't
I
change
do
the
too.
requirement for a basic esthetician, and that's still allowed, and you have to go to a school for that?
Oh, you
But
will?
maybe an
Well,
additional program is created by a separate vendor
A couple
or
of
an
us
internship.
are in dire need of a restroom break, but let me finalize it with the reason that I've tried to capture the attention of the schools, and I think we've done it pretty well, is that way we can, when we do make a modification, they see it as the only way to go and not put up a lot of objection. And they have been responding to the agency that way because they have credibility. We have credibility now that we know what we're doing and we're going in the right directions. They see us as a benefit now instead of the...
Like a partner.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the phrase I use, partnership. Let's take a break.
But Vince, before we do, though, one quick thing.
Please sit still.
Would you mind... Okay. Well,
Let's give a 10-minute break and then we'll get back to it and then we can wrap this.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
It is now 11:02.
I can't believe that I'm going to pee under his own public pressure.
That's us advancing and becoming more.
We're reconvening the meeting at 11:11. Mr. Leader is about to make a comment.
So now that we're resuming and kind of winding things up, I did speak to 2 school owners, and again, they're both school owners expressed the exact same thing to me, which was, how are instructors going to be qualified to teach advanced aesthetics? That was both of their questions.
I'll be seeing all of them, and I don't remember exactly what date, next couple of weeks. So, are they both from Northern Nevada?
Reno. Yeah,
Nevada.
both me.
The issue is I will be talking about the efforts that we're going here, and that we're in the vision development stage of, and I'll explain the problem between the lack of control and regulation and training, etc., and what's occurring in the medical field. And some of the doctors don't like it, some don't. But in that, I'll start laying the foundation for the schools. Think about if we get into a second tier operation, what your role's going to be. That's your call, not ours. But if you get involved, then you're going to have to live with the standards we develop when we finally come up with what we're going to develop. So if you guys want to expand your business, you may want to think about it. But we're not going to respond to just, well, I don't want to do it, or how are my instructors going to be qualified to teach? We'll send them to school. They have to take the course to be that, and then they got to be certified they can teach it. That's how they get there. There's no other way. We're not going to just grandfather you or any of that stuff. So that's the answer to them. And usually what they'll see the logic, because I'll present it in the fact that if I owned a business, how I would look at stuff. Long-range planning, short-term planning, paying attention to what the state does so we can react quickly. And what would it cost for us to do that kind of stuff? Or align ourselves with a particular program, be certified by that program.
So in a nutshell, for our next meeting, we're trying to do 3 or 4 things. First thing is to kind of pinpoint what it is you envision for that second tier. Secondly is the kind of how you think those outer limits of that second tier is gonna start looking. Just in your mind. Now, be flexible, but just look at what those outer limits are. Like Vince had mentioned, I think that's a great tool. We're going to also look at terminology, and if there's something that you feel like you're not getting, and there's plenty of things I don't get. So just, bring that to the table. And everybody wants to have a definition for paramedical.
I don't even know what that
I
means.
think we eliminate there is no such thing.
But the craziest thing is in regulatory review 2 or 3 years ago, it was omitted, as if it's not a word.
Well, they used to call paramedic, and that was.
What's a paramedic?
But when we were submitting the law changes, we included.
No, I don't recall us doing that.
Paramedics. They don't call them paramedics. They call them EMTs now.
Yeah, see, paralegal is not a lawyer, but they have the skills to do research. And paralegals can write the forms that you send to people, but they're not lawyers. They're not qualified to be lawyers in any way, shape. But they can do the sub tasks of the lawyer who has to sign off on the item. EMTs are paramedics. They were people who knew how to do certain skills. They went to a lot of classes. Paramedics is a 2-year program, I think, or more, which fire personnel are taught the skills of stabilizing a patient, taking blood pressure, and all those things and injecting emergency medications like when they have a heart patient that needs to be injected immediately into the heart. They know how to do that, and there's been extensive training, so they're qualified. A lot of them either stay in fire service or they go into the medical field.
They're required to be on direct line with the doctor.
Yeah, they actually are under the control of a doctor at the ER room.
Oh,
well, yes, that's.
And there's not only a doctor, there's a nurse, a fully staffed physician's assistant. They never lose control of that.
They're always
constant,
constant
all the way into the hospital.
So again, this it kind of reiterates what it is we're doing here, is that direct supervision. You have these outer limits to these people's skill sets, so they're still able to do this and that and save your life.
Now, my understanding, though, is there are emergency situations that they cannot get communication, and they have to
be trained to handle it right then and there.
There's probably all sorts of contingencies, and I think we have those now.
Here's what I see, Alex, because I was part of the dialogue that David was with all this, with the AG's investigation and the medical assistance and all that crap, because I was involved real deep, quietly in the background. My sense is that the biggest problem I was having was the 30-minute, 30-mile rule for someone who is being injected with a chemical or...
But the AG's office said that didn't exist. The investigator said there's no such thing. Somebody made that up.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but that was his stance. I don't know. Did he say it in that meeting, or I know he said it.
I heard that, and that's what we were looking at when Benaldi was going to come work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30, he's only 20 minutes from.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what.
And-
But Todd said to me, I don't know where
He
you get
had-
this from. There's no such thing. Somebody just made that. They're
No,
making that up.
he may have said that, but bottom line is the medical board of examiners have struggled with that particular issue, and that's been the part of the dialogue of that is occurring, especially in the rural areas. So the new proposed regulations that you've got in the book deal with, in the rural areas, that's allowed if they can be within telephone contact and stuff like that. In the metropolitan area, they were struggling with how do they limit that problem. Because if a single doctor owns
More than
three
one
clinics,
clinic, right.
and he or she is the only doctor on the staff, he can't be or she can not be in all three places. So how do they deal with that? They use this unofficial, there's no official law, written policy or whatever that says 30 minutes or 30 miles. But that's the general way they function. So the problem with that is how do we deal with that? One of the things we can say is our estheticians, licensed estheticians, are not allowed to perform activities that are considered medical procedures without doctors being in direct supervision. And that means within the building or the confines of the property.
Right.
See? Very simple. Well, our license prohibits it. Medical guys have ignored it. Now they're having to deal with it under force. And they haven't really resolved what the issue is. I mean, how to final answer. But my sense is we could get to that outer limit if we wanted to. And the training required for injectables, a minimum of 50, 60, 100 hours, whatever the hell it is you guys decide. And the kind of training that has to be done. It has to be done at the hospital or it has to be done by such and such. And it can't be just 5 hours or let me show you how to fill the needle and stick it in.
Right.
Because that's some of them actually admit that they had 6 hours of training on it. Now they're experts at injectables.
And then also what I'd like to see for the next meeting too is, you know, one of the things I thought about in our little break is maybe Dr. Benaldi wants a trip down to Vegas, and he might want to coincide it with our next meeting. You know what I mean? Because it's a deduction for him. I mean, if he goes to Vegas and then comes in to see us, that's a deduction for him. So, I mean, I don't want to preclude him from meeting with us in Las Vegas, is what I'm trying to say. If you make him aware of
That would be his call.
that would be his call.
If he wanted to come there
Yeah.
versus come here and
So
wait
if he
that
would
long.
like to be a guest sooner than that February meeting.
Yeah, he's welcome to come in any of the meetings that you want him to.
And so I
the
just
trouble
wanted
is
to
it's
propose
unfair to
that.
make him pay for it. I mean, to have him spend his money to come where he could easily meet here for
So
nothing.
while it is more convenient for Reno, I suspect, if, for instance, you advise him when that next meeting date is and he chooses to want to be a guest at that meeting, please extend that invitation to him because...
Thank you. I would possibly even, in addition to meeting, like within the next little bit here, extend that invitation. But I would say that I'd like to see him come on board as soon as possible so we can bounce these things off him, ask his opinion, and, that's like,
Move it
all
forward.
you can do.
Move it forward quickly.
And I just have found that's the only way you can address stocks. But anyways, I would think that if we could do this in the next couple weeks, we could come alongside. We're going to have a much more effective vision.
So you want me to see if we can put together a special meeting up here for have David and I to come up and meet with him, just take his testimony.
That would be my first thing.
The only issue we have is just arranging for our travel arrangements and posting requirements.
So
That's all.
what about if we were to maybe shoot for the Monday before the Vegas board meeting?
Book.
Okay, let me see. I was just thinking as well, am I allowed to talk to him?
Yes.
That's not.
Talk to him about anything you want. Yeah.
Okay.
The meeting's been posted, and you're just reviewing the information with
Yeah.
them, and we're authorizing you to introduce our concepts to a
Okay.
physician. It happens to be that in physician. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I just don't want
that
anything
Vegas
wrong.
board meeting is not until October, late October.
Yeah, the Vegas board meeting is the 25th. We're going to meet on the 26th as a committee. So if we were perhaps to meet with him beforehand, then our next meeting could even be that much more constructive.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to
I like
put
it.
you guys up here.
What are we
but
talking about?
we're kind of sort of looking at maybe the 11th or the 18th
Of September.
of October.
October?
So that way the board meeting is the 25th, and then we would meet as an aesthetics committee on the 26th.
Yeah,
in the morning.
it's not that inconvenient. If you guys, if we can get a commitment by him, and you guys are willing to say like the 18th or the 11th, it's just a matter of David making sure he has enough time to reschedule his
It's a Monday, so I can do that.
And so he and I can bop up here real quickly. It's not a problem.
And so maybe another thing that we could do, if I'm not quite sure of what his schedule is best, but maybe if they took the morning flight, we could meet at 10. They
Yeah,
could
we
still
can-
be out by 1, 2, or something.
I usually take the 6 o'clock flight. I'm
Okay.
here by 7:30 in the office. 7:30 quarter to
Okay.
8. Now I know
Yeah.
there's a 7:55 flight would get you here about 8:30. Is that more convenient for you sleepy people?
So then we could meet at 9.
All right, so we
and
say
have him out of here by, say, 10.
Well, I would think that
he'll probably want to stay longer in a few minutes.
I would think that he'd want to be here for like an hour,
At
and
least
it
an
would be
hour, yeah.
very like an effective hour. Like we'd have a line of questions for him, and maybe we can banter those back and forth on email if that's appropriate or no.
Say it again.
Put questions on email so we can come up with
Have
questions.
dialogue through email. I don't know.
I don't think it's a problem if you. What are you trying to do? Develop the questions for him?
Right.
Why
So
don't
it's
you
very-
Why don't you draft some questions that you feel like are important and just
Then email to
them
us,
to
and then we might
Vince.
make. And then Vince could email us, and we might make a change or so, or add something to your list. We'll do
Okay.
it that way.
Yeah,
This
Well, what
way
I was
we're
going to
not-
say
oh,
is Vince can compile them all,
That's a
Compile
good
them and
idea.
say,
and then just have a sheet of.
these are the questions that were asked by each
Yeah.
of the board members, and then there's no question about.
Okay, which date do we want to do?
I don't care. I've got both of them open.
Well,
I'm gonna-
for me personally, the 18th is a little better
Okay,
because I
fine.
think the 11th might be a holiday.
11th.
11th is
Columbus
Columbus Day.
So you think the 11th?
I
You want to do the 11th?
I work on the 15th.
So let's do the 11th. Well, the 15th is a Friday.
No, it's
Yeah.
18th we're talking about.
Oh,
The
18th.
Mondays. Both are Mondays.
Both are Mondays, so either one of those is good for me.
All right,
Whatever you guys
18th.
pick.
Which one do you guys like the best?
Why don't we try to let him decide?
Shall I call him
Yeah, why
real
don't
quick and see if he has an opening on either one of those days? Would that be
I'm
all
going
right
to
with you
say
guys?
both days, but yeah, you can call him if you like, see if you can get hold of him. If not,
Well, I'll just get a secretary.
then you can, we can adjust. But I'm saving both days.
It sounds
just in
like you've
case.
already approached him about.
Of course.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jeanette Benaldi. How are you? Good, sweetie. Can you check the doc schedule for the 11th or the 18th
I tell what month.
Of October.
of October? I'm sorry. Yes,
My wife does.
I'm looking at it.
It's in your head, but not his.
The 18th of October is a Monday, or the 11th. Okay. No. I was just trying to book an hour of his time to come over and talk with State Board. So what day is not surgery day? Tuesdays. Tuesdays. Okay. All right. I'll have to get back to you then, Doll. Thank you so much.
The alternative date would be Tuesdays. I'm committed for an AG's operation on the 19th.
So
So
the
it would be the
12th.
12th. The alternative would be you give up a weekend day, come up on the Sunday.
So I'm good with that. I'm good with a Sunday. I'm good with the 10th or the 17th, and I'm good with the 12th.
I know it'll cost me dinner or something for David because he's not coming cheap.
And then you traditionally work on a Tuesday?
Yes, but Tuesdays are
Would you
one of
rather
my
do it on a
days.
Sunday? Oh, wait a minute, I won't be. The 17th, I'm going to be gone out of the state.
How
It'll
do
be
you
the
feel?
10th. Would be all right.
Yeah.
Do you think
Or
he's
Tuesday.
receptive to a Sunday?
Yeah.
With his family situation and all?
Yeah, I think you'd be okay.
So why don't we shoot then for the 10th?
The 10th is a good
The
possibility.
10th? Okay, 10-10.
So what I can do
10,
is
10, 10. Oh my gosh, that's weird.
that is weird. The other day was 8, 9, 10. I would say that let me get with him, and then I will let Vince know exactly
I'll
what.
have to post it, but I have the keys to the office, so we still can meet in the same place. Not a
Okay.
big deal.
And there's plenty of time to post, so
Yeah, it's not-
if you just get back to Vince, then Vince can alert
I can
all
confirm
of us.
that everybody that
And
we're
then
on-
once we know the date, then we'll all write our questions out, and we'll send those questions to Vince, and
Okay.
then Vince can
I'll
come to the
compile it.
table with all the questions.
And so then we could just have a very, facilitated, just like this is what we're going
Right.
to do, this is what we're going to look for these answers, and then he's in, he's out.
Right.
Because I know that he will just freak out if it's not completely, exactly, effective for 1 hour.
Right.
Well, his
This
part
is brainstorming. And
this
that's
part
not
is
what
not
we
going to be
wanna
that
do
hard.
with him.
Your
Right.
question should be, what is his thought about this problem? I can structure the issue, and we can actually send him structure the definition of what the issues we're looking at, and have him come with knowledge that those are the kinds of things he's got to be thinking about.
And that was originally my first email to him, and then he was really excited about it, and I was trying to look it up earlier, and it's gone.
So I will have to get the address for him. You and I can talk about setting things up. But what we want to do is prep him mentally, so when he comes, he's thinking about this stuff. So when you ask him the questions, he'll be able to say, "Okay, this is what I think."
I was kind of thinking of providing them with those questions ahead of time.
Well, yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
a problem with that either. I'll send them to each of you once I compile them, and then Jeanette can make sure he gets it.
Yeah.
If you give me his address and stuff, I'll send him a
Yeah,
formal request.
I would actually do that.
Even though you've already got it all set up, but a formal request with a copy of what we're looking into, and then what his the questions that'll be likely be asked of him, and so he will have thought through what he.
And then I
say.
think he'll have a better picture of the whole
That goes for the same way for your
response.
guest
Like
when-
he won't just be answering one question,
So
but
we
he'll
prep
be
them for
answering
the
that
mental
question in context with all the other questions. And I think it will help him to
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
give him a better frame on how his responses will be, and he'll have an ample opportunity to kind of think about that 5 or 6 injectables that are maybe okay, and then the 5 or 6 injectables that are no way, kind of thing.
Well, he
See,
may
and
very.
I would really look forward to both of the questions that you guys have, because you have such a different perspective on it as far as that, the detailing. So that would help me.
Anyway, it'll start the process of what doctors may think about what the ideas we're working with.
Oh, I think he'd jump at the chance, because he's loves to be a pioneer.
Well, and then that was my fourth thing. So in addition to trying to do the pinpoint, get those outer limits, talk about the terminology, then that's my fourth point is I really want to try to figure out the players and how we're going to be more involving with the players. Which, for me personally, one of the players are all of those medical estheticians out there. I really would like to hear from them. It's like, why have you escaped our licensing requirements? Why?
Well,
They're not.
they're not.
I'm not asking them to
escaping.
say it that way.
They're just looking for more money, better paying jobs. That's all it is.
Security. I think they're looking
Yeah,
for
that's
security.
got. Some of them will say it's because it's more complex. It's better than what I'm at. It's a higher level. That's the reason.
But really, you guys have come up with 3 reasons.
Well, the
Just
loophole
amongst
they're getting through with is they're working as MAs.
Yeah,
They just don't know.
they're determined to be
They don't
MAs by the doctor.
So at some point, I would like, for our next task is, when you guys think of the players, and obviously you're welcoming Dr. Bonaldi, but, and actually it's his partner, Dr. Janega, is that Janega?
I've not even met.
Oh, he
my
just did a
docs.
procedure on Olivia, my daughter, and it turned out really great. I don't want this public record, but...
I'm concerned that what happens is we ask too much of the people violating the laws. We should be crafting the process to keep that from happening, not asking their opinion to say it's okay to violate the law. So I'm not concerned about that level of player, but cosmetologists in general may have a view. Most of them will not come forward. I think the players are going to be things like the Board of Medical Examiners, the Board of Nursing, nurses particularly, doctors particularly, medical spas, doctors who don't go into that territory, who have different views.
I have a couple who don't even like nurses injecting.
Yeah, they're very rigid on stuff.
Yeah,
we have a doctor.
Dr. Williams was.
We do have a
years
doctor
ago.
They're so much better than docs are.
familiar with our stuff, Dr. Hardy, who has been as a stalwart in our corner, that kind of stuff. So those are the players, and then we want to say, we think that those players are going to be resistant or supportive. Some of them will see it as a solution to an ongoing problem that they've sort of gotten around. Others will see it as a way to get training for their people so they'll be better prepared when they offer jobs to these folks. And then others will say, well, it's going to cost me more money because more training means more dollars.
On the other hand, my ex-sister-in-law, is professor of nursing at UNR. So she would be really great to talk to, but I really don't want to push forward with the nursing until we establish what we want to do.
We don't want to involve the others either.
I don't want to talk to the nurses because I think then we're
One of the ways
throwing
you talk to people who are naysayers,
baby with the
or at
bathwater.
least you perceive to be naysayers, ones that don't want to support, is what you just call them in, ask them if they participate in dialogue, and you ask them what their opinions are, period. You don't say really what you're going to do. You just say, what's your view of this problem that we're struggling with in our own profession, and I'm sure the medical board examiners, what's your view? Just what's your view?
Is it okay if I email her about that?
Yeah, just see if she has input about it. So what you're going to find is sometimes you're perceiving they may have a view that they really don't.
Yeah.
That's what I've found. Some of them you think are going to be totally opposed, and they say, I've been thinking about that for a lot of years. I just never said much to anybody.
Well, she used to be the partner in the practice, and now she's not. So
And some of them will tell you the truth about it. Well, it saves us money, and this is why, but we really didn't like it. But it's a hell of a lot better for our economy, for our business, profit and loss statement. So those are the kind of issues. And those are the ones that are now out of it who can tell you the truth because they're no longer involved.
What do you think the least invasive way of asking that would be?
Just-
What's your opinion of the
Say,
medical?
I would state the
estheticians?
problem, much like I would do with Lewis, is state the issue that we're looking at. We don't know the answers. We're just doing research now, and we're getting different points of view on the topic of what's in the way, why is it done, what's the doctors feel about it, what do the nurses feel about it, and you're just gathering data. Don't make it a conflict dialogue, or we're going to do it this way. What do you think about that? That's a direct conflict. You just say, we're looking at the topic in general. And
The
you're
topic
asking
of
generic.
medical spas?
No.
I think it's really the topic of
Expansion of the esthetician.
Medical assistance is almost the topic. It's like how that role of the medical assistant is really just a very loose set of guidelines, and our profession gets rolled
Another way,
up in it.
Jeanette, I can help draft how you ask it. I mean, in other words, something to state the issue.
Yeah.
So it's not combative with her, not.
Yeah, I think as soon as you say medical assistant to a nurse, she's like, I hate them all.
Yeah, what we say is we've realized that there's a conflict that developed in the terminology because for economic reasons between physician's assistants and nursing and the new phenomenon, the medical assistant, and the use of these different players in the system. Do you have any personal views on this issue?
Yeah, I like.
What's being done right? What's being done wrong? What would you recommend us looking at?
I like that, and then I think also just to touch on the questions that we're doing. Should we prepare questions for the insurance company for when your friend Chris comes, or the?
Well, with Chris, I would like to hear his personal view.
That's exactly where I love
Personal
those
view?
speak, yeah.
Okay.
Because he gets to work with it all the time.
Yeah, he
From
works
the
for
insurance
company.
company's point of view and most of those players are pretty knowledgeable on what they're dealing with.
And also to let you know his background, he was a malpractice attorney and he was an EMT before that.
Yeah, so he's got,
So
a
very
sense
knowledgeable.
Wow.
sense
nice.
of what the industry, what it's all about.
Okay.
Paralegals was a big one. For a lot of years, paralegals were seen as, why would we want to use one of those? And bottom line is they do the research. In fact, Sarah's job, our Attorney General, when she, deputy, when she graduated from law school, that's what she was basically doing, is equivalent of a paralegal. But from a legal standpoint, helping write decisions through research for the judges of a municipal court or district court. So that's what her role was. That's one of the reasons she's not as good as the litigation stuff, because she's not had a lot of practice in that. She's used to doing the research, looking at the law, interpreting it, writing down the result. Different than when you try cases.
Mm-hmm.
See,
Is there anything then that you want to see? Like, those are the areas that I want
No,
to
I've
see for
already
the next
got-
meeting. So, okay.
I think that's a good group of stuff.
And is there anything else that you want to kind of see, or no?
Big gulp of water there. No, I thought that was really great, and I think it's a good directive.
That's a good progress report when we get those tech down. Some of that.
I'm going to text Chris, see if he comes that Sunday to the meeting here. after
Oh,
the doctor.
that's good.
See if
He's
he
in
might-
town here.
He lives here.
Oh.
Yeah, they might be willing to donate 2 hours of their time on a Sunday if it's convenient for them, say the afternoon, because you got to be careful about church and all those other things. It inconveniences David because we have to fly, but it's okay. We're getting some really God's work done kind of thing, you know. The other issue is I would like to really start you guys thinking about what your vision is. Well, you've told me what you want to see or what concerns you, but from a holistic point of view, looking at everybody's interest, what do you see those outer limits look like? And what would you like to see when it's perfect? I used to be able to describe that when I'd say, I came into an organization and say, my vision for what I see, let me put it in real terms. And I'd tell stories, and I'd say, I'm a police officer in a police car marked, and I'm driving down the street, and I see a black lady watering her lawn, and she waves and smiles. What does that envision? Friendliness, supportive role. Down the street's a couple kids playing, and I stop and talk to them for a moment. And a little further down is the ladies want me to stop because they were concerned my wife was pregnant the last they had heard, want to know what's happening. See what I mean? There's a vision there that everybody can relate to. Friendly, supportive, helpful Harry. That's a vision. Now, how do you get to that vision? These are all the things we got to do to make that happen.
Not kill people.
More importantly, is that they don't even concern about that's a big red herring. What they really look at is when I call, I'm treated with respect. People come, they're concerned. I feel comfortable telling them my problem and I'm calling for assistance. And the police car now looks at my neighborhood like one of the players in the neighborhood. So when they see the car, they see a friendly, not the enemy. Right. What did I do wrong is the usual. How many of you, when you're going down the street and a police car pulls in behind you, you start getting little sweat beads on the top of your forehead?
I was check my safety.
And even me, and I was their boss. I was coming from lunch, going to the police station, and I'm in what do they call what do they call it? They used to have a nickname for my car. You know, the cop mobile or whatever the hell it was. Anyway, and here comes a traffic officer right behind them saying, did I do something wrong? And I'm their boss. They're not going to mess with me, but it's a natural thing. So the vision tends to demonstrate what it feels like when everything is fine. Same way with us. When it's perfect, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Are we proud of what we did? So that's what we need to try to pin down, because that dictates how the next steps. What do we got to do? How is a priority fit? What's first? What's second? Do we have to change the laws? Yes. Do we have to convince people? And we got to do a lot of meetings. See, for me, it's going to mean how to keep the schools neutralized. I got to talk to them constantly, keep them from causing trouble, or be supportive of the idea, but not bitch, moan, groan, and complain. Mm-hmm. That's my job. Neutralize them.
I am going to have to get going, though.
So you guys see how the plan works for making a major change like this, and that's not what's been done in the past. It was arbitrarily changed. There's no research.
Well, that's because this is my committee, Vince.
Oh, you're going to take it. Let's get. Anyway, is there anything else for the meeting today?
No, I want to get some of those books.
Which books?
The Milady.
Well, we'll ask.
We'll take.
Seattle.
I'll make sure we get enough
Because
copies.
they're underwriting one of the conferences, the lady there. So she just.
It's all right. How many? Who doesn't have one? You have one.
I have one.
I don't have them.
I can have another one.
But if we need to buy 4, call them to see if we can get 4.
Yeah, I'd like to have one.
We may have 1 or 2 in the
Advanced
office. We may have 1 or
Okay.
2 in the office. I got to check. We're going to terminate the meeting. It's now 11:40.
Is there any last minute to add, Vince? Did you have any?
Yeah, I was asking. Is anything else before we terminate the meeting?
No.
Okay, so the next meeting is scheduled for
Tuesday, October 26th, with maybe a special meeting on Sunday, October 10th.
That's correct.
Or, yeah.
Okay, this adjourns the meeting at 11:41.